All right. Thank you. Give me 1 second, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and share this link. Grab this link real quick. Okay. Okay. What's up, family? How's everybody doing? Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
All right. So, how many of y'all know who I am? I don't know if you're not familiar. Okay. Those of you who are not familiar, why are you here? What brought you out here today? I see smiles, but I don't hear them.
Come out here.
I want to hear them. They can say something. Okay, that's good.
I'm learning more about
information. Cool. Anybody else? No? Got a lot of shy people in New Orleans. What's going on? Okay, that's fine. All right, so my name is DivineProspect. I have an organization called Kingdom Harbinger Ministries. 3 of the major tenets that we have is called culture, community, and autonomy. So the objective is to reconstruct and restore our culture, right? And that we have lost and that we've only had remnants of, and to reconstruct and restore it with the express purpose to create more close-knit communities, and with that to become self-governing, which means autonomy. So in order for us to have all the resources that we need in our community, we have to take ownership of those things by using the common denominators that bind us and use the numerators to be something that's a byproduct that we can discuss once we're able to aggregate all of our resources and come together as a people. All right. So this is pretty much the I would say at the forefront of what we're pushing. And we want people to get involved, and we want everybody to be active in your community, because you can't complain about the change if you ain't trying to be it. You know what I'm saying? And people complain all the time. It's issues, even out in New Orleans, issues everywhere you go. But what are you doing in order to make a difference? You understand what I'm saying? And that's the most important thing that I really want people to understand, is that we're not only going to talk about it or be talkers or hearers, but we're going to be what? Doers. And we're going to get things into action. All right. So I know there's some people that's probably ready to ask me a million questions. All right, we'll get to that when we have the Q&A. But for right now, I'm going to pretty much break down for you what the subject matter is. And before I start, I want to give a shout out to Shay, because Shay was the person to say, yo, brother, I just want to bring you down to New Orleans just to break bread with you. He was like, initially he wanted to make it a much bigger event, but I had some personal issues that was going on. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get back to him sooner so we could have like a much larger venue. But what actually worked out was that we're supporting a Black-owned business, and we're patronizing something that's already in our community. So why not allow the dollar to circulate here first, since statistically speaking, it only circulates 6 hours before it's out our community. So it's good that we're putting it here, and that the owner said, look, you guys are welcome to use the vicinity as you please, just be respectful, which we're going to be. And at the same time, we want to go ahead and give her support. So he already gave her a shout out. So thank you. I want to thank her for that. And he invited the elder here. Can you introduce the elder for us?
Yes. This is Brother. Let him introduce himself. Stand up and let people know
how y'all doing. Brothers of Rock Israel, R94 Israel Rising. My brother back there, Brother James. We were R94 Israel Rising up in Metairie. So, welcome.
Now, sometimes it get hot, and if it gets too unbearable, let me know. We're gonna throw the AC on. There might be a slight hum, but that's fine. I'm gonna talk loud so you can hear me. And just so you know, the format that I'm doing is not gonna be your typical formal lecture, right? So since it's New Orleans, it's my first time being out here since I identify as an Israelite. I said I want to talk to the people. I want them to talk back. All right. So this is going to be an open forum. So if you want to ask a question, you're going to give some feedback as we're going through it. Feel free to do that. All right. If you don't say nothing, I'm going to start picking on people, starting with the back. All right. So I want you to be engaged. Don't be shy. Don't feel uncomfortable. You're welcome to ask any question. There's no dumb question, no dumb feedback. That's how we all grow. We all learn. Even me. I'm a student before I'm a teacher. All right. So I just want to make sure you know. So now, can somebody tell me has anybody seen the flyer? Raise your hand if you've seen the flyer. All right. So somebody tell me what is the subject matter on the flyer? What did that flyer say? Y'all can cheat if you want. It's an open book test. I see somebody going to the phone like, all right, hold on. It's an open book test. You're good. Go ahead. Let me know. Mm-hmm.
I still have trouble with it.
The revelation of dietary law.
All right, so hold on. So say that, what you say? Yes, I think a part of that is missing. What is the... There you go. I know it's a mouthful. Cool. All right, so if you're reading that, what comes to mind? If you're reading something like that, like I would have been like, I don't know what this means. What is God talking about? What comes to mind when you hear that?
I would say like the whole, not just the template, but everything that's kind of that plays a part in the whole dietary laws, as far as things that may affect it indirectly as well as directly, as far as your health, but as well as the world health.
The world's health. Okay, good. I like that. Yes, but specifically, who are we talking about? At least on tonight. Yes, but I wanted to broaden it, right, for people who may not be in our circle. Who's the target that we're speaking about on that flyer? That last part, it was who? African American identity. So we want to start at home first, so then we could be a much brighter light to everybody else around us, right? So that's why I wanted to bring it home, because I knew the majority of people that was coming out here were going to be us, right? So I want to say that New Orleans is a live city. You know, when I came out here the first time, it was around Mardi Gras. It was crazy. I didn't see anything outside of Bourbon Street or wherever the case may be. But now I was taught I'm in Third Ward. You know what I'm saying? I've read about Third Ward. I knew people that lived around in this area. So now I'm clearly here. And I know that with this information, we can wake up the masses. You know what I'm saying? Because the only way that a community can change is if you are the change. So after this discussion, if you didn't learn enough for you to go and tell somebody something, to educate them, to edify them, to empower them, to equip them, to encourage them, then I failed. All right. And definitely you can create a suggestion box out of this. If you have any suggestions in order to make this better, because I want to come back to New Orleans with another unique topic or subject matter that you can use as an icebreaker with your friends, your family, coworkers, and whoever. All right. So let's start off with the flyer. So it says a divine. Divine means something that's ethereal, supernatural, etc. Right? Ecological. What does ecological mean? What is an ecology? Anybody can break it down. Anybody? Living environment. Excellent. Anybody else? Again, this is an open book test, so you can go to Google if you want. Go ahead. I'll let somebody else say it before I break it down.
This would be like the biology of the animals, organisms, just any living thing.
And an environment, right? And how they interact, what is their respective places, their roles, etc. Right? So how many of y'all can name me 10 native animals to New Orleans?
Pelican, alligator.
Y'all can help them. And that's a good question. It's a good question, right? You think about it, yeah. What else? Any birds that you know that's native here? Or what about crops? Any kind of plants or trees or what was that? Sugar cane. Okay, what else? Citrus. Okay, anything else? So I have to expand it beyond animals. Okay, so plants. Anything? Do you have like a fruit tree that's famous out here? Figs. Oh, that's deep. Magnolia plants. There you go. Okay, awesome. What's that? Pecans. Oh, that's excellent. Okay, anybody else give me another animal? Crawfish. All right. So how many of y'all ever studied the plants or the animals in this environment? Like ever take time to actually just look at it, just to see, empirically how it moves and how it operates and how it thrives and what prevents it from growing? How many have ever done that before? Maybe on TV when we're watching like Animal Planet or something like that, right? But like actually in your immediate environment, because if you have not done that, think about it, how disconnected we are from the natural environment that we live in. And then when we look at things, you may see mosquitoes as a pest or these insects, but we're the actual pests in this environment. Right. We created a whole city for an environment that was already here thriving before we got here. And then we got the nerve to get mad at the animals and the insects and the plants for being in our way. Think about that. You have your own house and then somebody just comes in and starts setting up shop in your house. And then you have smaller corners of your own house that you was living on before somebody moved in. Think about that. So the objective is, how can we stay in right sync and harmony with the organisms that's in our environment with respect to the land around us? And how can we do so in a format that's in a right relationship with what the creator would intend for us to do? So we're going to learn a little bit of history going into the scriptures about this. And we're going to try to find out if anything that we're learning can apply to a real issue that we face in our community today. And that's pretty much what I want to extend into. So before I get into the ecology thing, there's an article that I got. It's called Religion and Culture, Revisiting a Close Relative. All right. So one thing that we're really big on is talking about culture. Now, I know a lot of people know religion, and if they hear this, they say, oh, what kind of religion you guys are? What are you guys doing? And so forth like that. But what I want to do is just take a step back and tell people, listen, I know you're familiar with religion, but there's also culture. Now, here out in New Orleans has been the intersection or crossroads for various different cultures, the French, the Spanish, Africans that were brought over here, and then people from the Caribbean that will come in and move over here. You got Creole in here as well. I mean, it is the hodgepodge of a a cultural epicenter. So when I come out here, I'm looking at the street names and the business names and the names of people, and I'm like, wow, people don't know what a culture is. All they got to do is visit New Orleans, right? Would y'all agree to that? So that's how you really get a feel for who the people are and not just what they believe. Because who the people are dictates what they believe and what values that they respect and what ethics that they have and their ties to this land and etc. So this is extremely important. So in this article, the person who wrote this you guys can get this online. It's by a brother named Jacob Bayers, and I'll show it up there later. But what he says, he says, religion and culture always exist in a close relation. Together with aesthetics and ethics, religion constitutes culture. As ethnicity becomes part of a related concepts, the relation with religion needs explanation. This article wants to emphasize that when studying religion, a study of culture is necessary. I'm gonna say it again. If you're studying a religion, studying a culture is necessary. So if a person is studying the religion of Christianity, the religion of Judaism, or even the religion of Islam, understanding culture is necessary, because without that background information, the religion will not make any sense, or it will be relative to what you want it to be. And it'll be taken most of the time out of context. So you're feeling me? Okay. So he goes on to say, number one, cultural migrations occurring worldwide. Number two, religion as cultural identity marker causing borders between culture and religion. And three, the location of religion within culture causing religion to act as a custodian of culture. This results in a situation where any signs of animosity towards culture are interpreted as opposition towards a religion. All three arguments necessitate studying ethnicity when studying religion. Wow, that's deep. This is somebody that's writing an academic article from the University of Pretoria in South Africa, where this person that is writing there, his ancestors are not native to South Africa, but in order for him to understand the religious affairs in that region, because this is from a theological school, he had to study the culture of the people. Because without that culture, the religion is displaced and doesn't make any sense. Or religion false call. So if somebody's going to pick up the Bible and read the Bible, if you don't understand the culture behind the Bible, then what are you reading really? What is your purpose of even diving into there? You're culturally misappropriating the information that was written directly to the author, written by the authors directly to the audience. That's extremely important. And that context works with any literature that you read that is based on a culture of people. So the religion doesn't mean nothing if you don't understand what birthed the religion. Are you feeling me? So a lot of things that I'm going to say to you now is getting you back to that cultural mindset. So when you go back to revisit this religion, it starts to make sense. All right?
So which means, just to add in, which means that the people who have the authorization to publish or who publish this Bible and the powers that be, they have no clue or no connection to the culture, the heritage of the people in it.
Facts.
They're outsiders coming in, trying to interpret what was going on, what is actually being said. It's no different than somebody come and study New Orleans, just because they heard Lil Wayne was from here, and they want to go to the 17th wall, but they have no idea when Lil Wayne talk about 1825 Tulane, when he say apple and eagle, he probably think he's talking about a fruit and a bird. So that's just to add on to what he's talking about there. Outsiders, this is a book that was written by Hebrews, to Hebrews, for Hebrews. So I'm finished with that, but I just wanted to add that, to what he said.
And that's excellent what he said, because that's like he said, a groupie of Lil Wayne coming out here and thinking New Orleans is everything that he's saying in his rap music, but don't realize there's a culture that produced him. And if you don't know the culture that produced him, you're going to be disconnected from the lyrics that's actually in his music. Okay. Same thing with that text. All right. So let me go ahead and read for you the definition of ecology. All right. So ecology is the science that studies the biota, which is living things, the environment, and their interactions. It comes from the Greek word okos, which means house, and logos, which means to study. Ecology is a study of ecosystems. Ecosystems describe the web or network of relations among organisms at different scales of the organization. Now, within that definition of ecology is that word ecosystem, how all of these living organisms interact and have their respective roles in the environment. But as you're studying the ecology of an environment, you also have what's called a topography. Now, that's a broad term used to describe the detailed study of the Earth's surface, or let's say the structure. There may be, in here in New Orleans, you have a swamp area, right? And that there's certain parts of New Orleans that's below sea level, if I'm not mistaken, right? So you're studying the topography of the environment because that will give you details on the environment and the organisms that live in that region and their impact on other neighboring areas, right? Are there any high areas here in New Orleans? Like, what's the highest point you could think about if you were thinking about New Orleans?
The highest point is actually, yes, there's the French Quarter.
The French Quarter is a high area, right? So when Hurricane Katrina came out here, what areas was decimated the most? Was it the low grounds, or was it also the high areas, or everything? The low grounds, but why is that? This should be easy. Why is that? Because it's low. So therefore, the water is going to pile up, and if it's below sea level, if the levees break, there's a dam out here, right? And the dam is holding back water, so that way everything below that sea level can thrive in that region. But if there's a hurricane, or there's anything that's pushing that water overboard, everything on the lower level is going to pretty much succumb to that water. Correct? So you got to study the topography of an environment to understand how the organisms thrive. Now, one thing that I learned over time is that whenever there's an impending danger and it has to do with water, animals go to the high ground. And you can watch how animals move and operate. They go to the high ground. I ever thought about this? I said, man, you know what? I always thought that whenever there's a flood somewhere or heavy rains, where do the insects go? You ever think about that? They're going somewhere so that way the next day they coming out. I'm like, how they survive that? You know what I'm saying?
To add on what you said too, if y'all remember the 2004 tsunami, 2004 tsunami. Before the people ever knew what was going on, the animal that was in Japan. No, the tsunami. Where was that? In 2004. I forgot where it was. Not in Haiti. No, it was in somewhere in the Philippines. Somebody Google it for me. Indonesia. The biggest one. Mm-hmm. They actually have video and footage of the animals long before the wave hit. The animals started leaving the beach. It was gone. It was fleeing, and the people was like, "What was going on?" Then they seen the water start to recede because the waves started to come in.
And that's interesting that they are more connected to this environment than we are, and we live here. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, if we was to lose communications today, modern communication conveniences, our phone, our car, will we survive? And we sit here looking at the animals like the animals are not as evolved as us, but I think that they have a high degree of intelligence by staying in sync with the environment than we do. There you go, because they have to rely upon that for their survival every day. But we get so comfortable that we may not have to be put in that position. Think about that, right? All right, so now that we understand what ecology is, what an ecosystem is, and then we see what the topography is, how you lay out the surface in which these things operate in, this is good information before you even start reading a text, because there are certain cities that have a lot low areas, high areas. Certain, I would say, crops can be grown in a low area that cannot be grown in a higher area. Do anybody know what horticulture is? Somebody can look it up on their phone. Yes, what's horticulture?
Horticulture is pretty much the study of plants and also growing different foods and crops and things that nature.
Okay, somebody pull that definition up. You're on the right track. Somebody pull the definition of horticulture. HORTICULTURE. All of this stuff is actually in the text. So what I'm doing is I'm showing you, giving you a scientific surveillance of things that are occurring within the text. Yes. Yes.
Read it out loud.
Yeah, you say it loud.
Horticulture has been defined as the agriculture of plants made for food, materials, comfort, and use. According to American horticulturist Liberty High Daily, horticulture is the growing of flowers, fruits, and vegetables and of plants for ornament and fancy.
For ornament and what?
Fancy.
Fancy. So how many of y'all know about one of the 8 wonders of the world, which was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon? Have you ever heard about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon? No? Look it up. All this stuff is really good information to know. So one of the things with horticulture is you use it for ornamental value, right? To improve the beautification of an area. And a lot of cities do that with parks and recreation, right? They beautify the area, they do landscaping and so forth. And y'all have some good landscaping out here as well. But if anybody somebody look up the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, you can read it. It's very interesting. Yes.
Hanging Gardens of Babylon,
Uh-huh.
one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. A lot of us didn't even know that. Keep going.
As listed by Hellenic culture.
Uh-huh.
Described as a remarkable feat of engineering that a civic series of
A remarkable feat of engineering. Keep going.
series of tired gardens.
Saying doing what? A series of entire what? Of gardens, right? But hanging gardens. So if anybody wants to pull up an image, you can take a look to see actually what it looks like. And this was a compelling feat that the Hellenists, which were the Greeks that were coming into Babylon at that time, they saw and was like, wow, this is incredible. Because this was part of their culture interfacing with their environment. It was a means of beautifying or bringing ornamental value to that region. All right. So the Israelites of the text were no different. And they practiced horticulture in the upper Central Hill countryside, which has a high impact when it comes to fortification, building walls, fighting an enemy. So like, let's say, for example, I build a city on a high mountain steep. It's much easier for me to see enemies on their way on up. And it's easier for me to attack them because they're out in the open. How many of y'all saw that movie 300? Raise your hand. All right. So y'all see the movie 300. How was they able to fend off the Mede-Persian army? That's one, but what else? Think about the topography, the landscape of the environment. So what they did was they funneled them into a small area between two big clefts. And then on the outside of one cleft was a hill that you can get pushed right on over. So if I was fighting a battle and I have 300 people and there's 1,000 other people, if I put everybody in a smaller area, only but so many of them can fight but so many of us. Right. And then we can fend them off, especially if we're better. And that's what they did. They kept them in that small space where it enhanced their fighting capability, because now they can't be surrounded, they can't be overwhelmed, and whoever's coming at them, they have an equal opportunity of fighting everybody. So when we read the text, do we think about these things that's going on? No. We're disconnected from it because we don't even consider that this has a bearing on what the people had to endure during that time period. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. So the thing that shapes the culture is the anthropogenesis of the people. So what is the anthropogenesis? What are you talking about, Divine? You're saying too many deep words. Right? What did he call me? What name? You call me a name? All right. So that's ANTHROPOGENESIS. So pretty much what that means, anthros has the word man, means the word man. Genesis means the beginning of man. Every culture talks about the origin of how they came to be. And then over time, you get what's called ethnic markers. And ethnic markers are things that make a group of people distinct from other groups of people, right? So the Israelites, they have a backstory that they had to construct in order for the entire nation to understand where we came from. And if we share this common story, we will always be one interlocked people, all right? So the reason why I'm bringing this up, because this has full bearing on ecology and diet of the people. What is the ecology that may have influenced the backdrop story? And then on top of that, the diet that the people were operating in to stay in sync with the environment. Because if you overuse the things in your environment, it cannot produce things for you naturally. Now, the difference is, in modern day times, we can get a truck. My brother here's a trucker. And we run out of, I don't know, you said what we have here, sugarcane. Mm-hmm. Somebody can go and get it shipped from Jamaica, and we can bring it all here and share it all out here in Magnolia if that's something that people like. During that period of time, it was much more difficult to mass ship things from one region to another. Now, trade occurred, but not on the level that we have here. We have planes, we have trains, we have cars, we have ships, we have containers. They didn't have that at that time. So what if they overuse something in the environment that you cannot really get, or something that was only native to that environment? Now, that's not going to affect the people consuming it, but what about the other animals that need to eat it as well? Then you're going to kill off those animals that need to eat that in order to be here for you to eat them. Think about that. We're going to go into a little bit. Or if you're eating animals and there's endangered species that are responsible for cleaning up the garbage of filth and manure and carcasses that's in the streets and roads at that time, if you eat all those animals, who's going to clean that up? So there's a reason why certain things became taboo not to eat, because if you overeat it or overconsume it, now you throw the entire balance off whack in that area. Are you following me? Okay. Keep going. Like, a lot of people will be like, man, I hate these mosquitoes out there. I wish we could eradicate every mosquito on the planet. Right. I know I felt like that every time I went on vacation somewhere. Yeah. But then I realized when you look up the mosquito and that food chain, if you kill that, anything you're trying to eat up here is not going to be in existence. But nobody thinks like that. But they were forced to do that in their environment because they didn't have all the modern conveniences. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. All right. So we're going to start off with the scriptures to kind of build a template. And I'm going to corroborate what we're reading in here with science. And then from there, we're going to say, how does this information equal to practical application to fix a societal ill that we experience every day? The number one killer of African Americans, we're about to find out one of the solutions to tackle that tonight. Kane Khan, yes, confirmed. All right, let's go. All right, let's start off first. A lot of you may be familiar with this already, but I'm going to try to give you some brand new insight, all right? So let's go with Genesis chapter 1, verse 26.
Genesis chapter 1, verse 26.
All right, go ahead.
And God said, let us make man in our image.
Okay.
After our likeness.
Okay, that's a different message altogether, but keep going.
Right. And let them have dominion.
And let them have what?
Dominion.
Let them have dominion. That's the key. Keep going.
Over the fish.
Over what?
the fish,
And what else?
and of the sea,
Of the sea, okay.
and over the fowl of the air,
And the fowl of the air, keep going.
and over the cattle,
And over the cattle.
and over all the earth.
So think about it. Slow down for a second. Man has a responsibility to rule and govern over every living organism on this planet. Think about how crazy that is. How do we have endangered species today as a result of man, when this was our first duty? We shouldn't have any endangered species, because if we learn what our role is, we will be good caretakers over that which was given to us. But now there's so many species that are not here because of us. Urbanization, overconsumption of resources in the land. There's certain things that are just not here. How many of you have heard about the honeybees dying out? Raise your hand. Or whales and dolphins coming up on shore dead. There's a lot of things that are out of whack because of things that we do. How many of y'all know that there's a huge landmass size, I would say, area of waste that's out there sitting in the Pacific?
Yeah.
How many of y'all know about that?
Yeah.
It's almost the size of a continent. Did y'all know that?
It's floating trash.
Y'all don't know that. And there's been several initiatives to try to clean that up. And when you see how big it is, it's an extremely daunting task. How many of you know about the oil spill that happened in the Gulf? Y'all should know that. You're from New Orleans, right? You heard about the oil spill from BP. Go ahead.
Right, but there's still also another smaller oil spill that's been leaking for the past at least 5 years that's not being covered.
Not even that. What's going on in Amazon right now?
Fires.
Wildfires. And you know what's interesting? A lot of people don't know. There was a Native American tribe that lived there in that region that took the oil companies to court because they were taking over their area of lands or whatever. They won. I think it was, somebody could look it up. I think it was a large sum. And then shortly after, we had fires in the same area that those tribes lived in. Is that a coincidence?
Nah, they trying to run them out.
Of course. Hey, I didn't say that. I'm just saying. It just looks like it's, some people say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, right? I ain't saying that. But the writing is on the wall. You see what's going on. But think about it. If the Amazon forest is wiped out, you know how much the plants contribute to the oxygen that's in our environment from the Amazon? If you kill off all those plants that are there, you're depleting oxygen reserves that we can have in a time that we need it. You do the same thing in the Congo. It's the same. These are the two largest rainforests that we have on the planet. If they're destroyed, our likelihood of surviving on this planet is going to be extremely slim. You know, you hear people talk about the melting of the ice caps all the time happening, and it's called global warming and stuff like that, right? Because the CO2 count that's going in the air. And now you have this push for safe green initiatives. So now they got electric cars and stuff like that to try to save the environment. We've done a poor job of protecting the very thing that the Creator put into our hands. This was our first goal. Before he said multiply, wait, read that again. I want to see read that again. What does that say?
And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness.
Keep going.
And let them have
let them have what?
Dominion.
Stop. That's the first duty of man. The first one, and we failed miserably. Miserably. And because of our overconsumption of material goods and items, we will continue to do a poor job. And one thing that they teach us as Black people, right, African Americans so-called, is to be consumers. How many of y'all have a garden in your backyard? How many of y'all have a garden, even if you don't have a backyard, somewhere in a windowsill in your house? How many of y'all know how to plant green beans? Raise your hand. If I tell you to make me sugar cane, how many of y'all can plant a sugar cane? We keep it in the book, right? We keep it 100. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the rudimentary things that we should know as a species on this planet that got us from point A to where we at today. A lot of us are even disconnected from that. Okay, so go ahead, read the rest of that.
And let them have dominion over the fish and of the sea.
Okay.
And over the fowl of the air.
That's a big job. Keep going.
Right. And over the cattle. And all over the earth.
And all over where?
The earth.
Just New Orleans.
The earth.
Just the U.S.
The earth.
Just America.
The earth.
So we have a job to have dominion over everything. So you think about that. Human beings have so much technology that we have the utmost control over anything that happens on this planet, but yet there are certain things we still can't prevent. Why was Katrina not prevented? You telling me that we can so-called send somebody to the moon, but you have no technology to disperse a hurricane that's killing off a whole bunch of people that live here in New Orleans? Now, if you're a resident to New Orleans, how many of you heard about FEMA? Raise your hand. Federal Emergency Management Agency. How much did FEMA contribute to helping any of y'all that was native out here in 2005? Raise your hand. Damn. You see, so some people received assistance, right? right? But then you'll hear some people that say that the reason why Katrina happened was because it was one of the opportunities to see FEMA in action. But from the general consensus, not of the media, but the natives that lived here were saying they did a poor job, a very poor job. Matter of fact, people told me they still owe checks. And this has been 14 years ago. Checks from FEMA and still haven't gotten it. Okay. All right. That's just me speaking, but we keeping it real tonight, right? All right. So read the rest of that. So what verse we at?
We at all over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth.
Every creeping thing. So you think about how awesome science is, that we have a classification system for almost everything that lives on this planet. That's incredible. And with technology, we're discovering more. Matter of fact, the Amazon itself houses almost the most diverse amount of species than any other ecosystem on this planet, and half of them being wiped out as we speak right now. They still have not put those fires out. You know how long has those fires been burning? And once those animals are gone, they can never be returned. So now think about this. If there's a huge lake, name a lake that's out here that you're familiar with. Is there a lake? What is it?
Lake Pontchartrain.
Lake what?
Lake Pontchartrain.
Pontchartrain?
Yeah.
So Lake Pontchartrain, right? Now, I don't know how big that lake is, right? But let's say it's pretty big, right? So if I took a rock and I threw it down at the center of that lake, let's say that lake has, let's say it was a still lake, like it has no motion in that lake. And I took a rock and I threw a rock right in the middle. Those ripples are going to reach every surface mass of that lake. But it will take time, and it may not be felt immediately. Every time you remove an organism from its natural environment, that's exactly what happens. And because it doesn't happen immediately, people don't think that there's not going to be any danger. But then you look at 20, 30, 50, 60 years over time and say, damn, why the honeybees ain't here no more? Because we're destroying the plants that they use to pollinate. And I see. Because, we wanted to expand the city in that region. Makes sense.
Right. I just want to touch on something right quick. And because when we look at our world, we're not the rulers. We don't have the power. We are not the people who are committing these acts against nature. But again, back to what I originally said, we are the children of the book. We are the reason why all of this is happening. Though we're not committing the acts, we're not committing the crimes, but the Most High had charged us with everything that I just read. We had dominion, but because we failed to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments, the power was stripped of us and given to another nation. We just word it that way. But at the end of the day, the earth is in this condition because we failed to keep the laws and statutes. If Israel was reigning and in power, you wouldn't have not one endangered animal on the
facts.
Yeah, on the list. Why?
Facts.
Because that's what the Torah outlines.
Facts.
Because we know how. If you're keeping Torah, you ain't keeping with Mother Nature.
There you go. And we're gonna get into that too. That's excellent that you said, because if we were the rightful rulers, we wouldn't be in this disarray right now. If we was being obedient, we wouldn't be. But see, a lot of times people think there's restrictions in following this culture. But there's restrictions religiously speaking, but culturally speaking, there's liberation. The problem is we have the wrong vantage point. We're not seeing it from its optimal perspective. And because of such, we have degraded it down to just something that we talk about and not something that we're actually doing. And the purpose of this is to inspire you to do. Are you following me? All right, keep reading that.
Okay. Genesis chapter 27. So God created man in his own image. And in the image of God, he created him.
Okay.
Male and created he them female. Excuse me, I read that wrong. Male and female created him, he them. Okay. And God blessed them. And God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living creature that moveth upon the earth.
That's incredible. That was one of mankind's first duties. And then he gave him a be fruitful and multiply so we can be everywhere and do this task. Let's go back. I think people missed that. The first duty was to be a caretaker of all the creatures that the Most High has created in the air and the land and the sea. The second thing was now be fruitful and multiply. And then what followed up after that was to continue to subjugate. And the purpose of fruitful and multiplication is to put our seed everywhere so we can continue to keep that first duty. Okay. All right. Keep going.
All right. Genesis 29. And God said, behold.
And behold, keep going. Listen to this.
I have given you
every herb
bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed.
What's that for? Keep going.
To you it shall be for meat.
For meat or food or sustenance. So the first diet that the Creator has given to mankind in order for him to continue to do his duty, because if we look a little further up, we see where he says that he has created the plants and the fruits and so forth to give after its own kind. That stuff was there not only to feed all the animals, but also to be food for man.
Right.
Okay. And that was his first food. Keep going to the next verse. Verse 30 says what?
And to every beast of the earth.
Slow down. So it wasn't only for us for meat, but it was what?
And to
every beast
of the earth.
What? And what else?
To every fowl of
every
the air,
bird. What else?
And to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life. I have given every green herb for meat, and it was so.
Slow down. So the first diet for every living being, according to the cultural literature, was one where you only ate seed-bearing plants, vegetation, and seed-bearing fruits. That was the Edenic model for diet, for everything. This is interesting, right? We're going to keep this in mind because we're in a much different environment today, but we can still take some cues from here to see if it can help alleviate some issues. All right. So this is what he said here. And I didn't say that. This is what the scripture says, right? This is what happened initially. Now we're going to progress because I don't want to exegete everything. I want us to do a topical surveillance of this subject matter in regards to ecology and diet and how it can fix the number one killer of African Americans on this planet. That's deep. You telling me you got some information that's going to tackle the number one killer? Oh, yeah, we got it. We got the hitman for that. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Y'all don't sound.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I mean, maybe you didn't want to come in for a solution, but you're going to get that before you leave. All right. So now, with that, man disobeyed. And because he disobeyed, now what happens? Go to Genesis chapter 3, verse 17.
Right.
And you'll see this concept that is replete throughout indigenous cultures. This is nothing different than other indigenous cultures that's still living in their property or their land today. Keep going.
Genesis chapter 3, verse 17. And unto Adam he said.
Now, this is after they disobeyed. Now, what's Adam's consequence?
Unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife.
So because you listened to the wrong voice, keep going.
And hast eaten of the tree,
okay,
which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it.
Keep going.
Cursed is the ground for thy sake.
Now, how is the ground cursed? Keep going.
In sorrow shalt thou eat of it.
Why? Keep going.
All the days of thy life. And all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall bring it forth to thee.
So slow down. So because man disobeyed and did not do what he was commanded to do, now the earth is fighting back. Now there was a movie that was written by M. Night Shyamalan. How you say his name? I forgot to say his guy's last name. I forget the name of it, but the trees were fighting the people.
Oh,
do you know the name of that movie?
Was that?
What's it called? The Happening. There you go.
Yeah.
So you know how crazy that movie is when you sit back and think about it. what the movie was saying was because mankind had allowed the earth to be in such a terrible shape, the trees themselves created an immune system to eradicate mankind.
Right.
Think about how crazy that is. But if we think about that concept from the movie and look back for what we're reading here, the earth said, look, because you have not done what you're supposed to do, which is to be in alignment with the creator who placed us here for you to be the caretaker, now we're going to fight back. Now we're going to have thorns and thistles. So when you try to get your food, you're going to get cut, you're going to get pricked, you're going to get a fight. And in sorrow, you're going to have to toil to get your food. Keep going.
And thou shalt eat the herb of the field, and the sweat of thy face.
And the sweat. Now you got to earn it. It's not going to be given to you anymore. Now you must earn it. Keep going.
In the sweat of thy face, thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it was thou taken.
And then what?
For thus thou art, and unto the dust unto dust shalt thou return.
Facts. So it's cool. So now we think about that. So according to the cultural anthropogenesis story, mankind was created from out of the ground. He was then given reign to rule over everything that is on the earth, in the sky, in the sea. Now, because he did not do what he was supposed to do, the earth is now fighting him back. And when he dies, the earth is going to consume him. So now he's stuck because of disobedience, right? Wrong? So now he's toiling, thorns and thistles is fighting him back, and he has to work through the sweat of his brow in order to feed himself and his family. Are you following?
Right.
All right, what verse were you at?
Okay, I was at verse 19.
Okay, so now here's something interesting that I don't know if anybody noticed. So now with this conundrum that we're facing, is there any form of restitution? Is there any form of reconciliation in order for us to have some kind of relief from having to suffer this way because of something that we did? Well, the creator decided, I'm going to broaden the load a little bit. Let's jump to Genesis chapter 5, verse 28. Now, let me know if y'all ever paid attention to this before. A lot of times when we read the text, we skim right through it because when we read genealogies, it becomes boring. I know when I was a Christian, and it's no shot to anybody as a Christian, but as a Christian, I know there was no heavy emphasis on genealogy except when we get to the New Testament. Before that, there was no real heavy emphasis on it, right? But there's something important there that is missed. Read Genesis chapter 5, verse 28.
Genesis 5, verse 28.
What does it say?
And Lamech lived.
Wait, and Lamech
lived 182 years.
Okay.
And begot a son.
So Lamech lived 182 years and begat a son. Anybody know who that son is before we get into it? Somebody said it. Say it loud. Noah. Okay, keep going. Now, why is this important? Keep going.
Okay. And called his name Noah. Saying.
Wait. Called his name Noah, saying what?
This saying shall comfort us concerning our work and toil.
Wait. This same person, my son, is going to comfort us.
Comfort us.
Keep going.
Concerning our work and toil of our hands. Because of the ground which the Lord had cursed.
So wait, so Noah is going to bring comfort under the consequence of our disobedience pertaining to the earth? What? Now, when I first saw this for the first time, I was like, what is this? I never paid attention to that before. What does this have to do with? Yes.
Can you look at this as like the first mass extinction?
That as well, correct. Now, that could be people continuously misusing or abusing their role as caretakers. So it could be a means to start over. But there's something else, because that part we may be familiar with. But there's something else. Read that again. Let me see if somebody, and before I read it, if you know that for his name, Noah, that word means rest. Did y'all know that? Rest. Okay, keep going.
You'd want to read it again.
No, read it again.
And he called his name Noah, saying, the same shall comfort us concerning the work and toil.
He's going to comfort us concerning listen to me saying, the work and toil. Think back of Genesis. We'll be ready. Keep going.
of our hand because of the ground which the Lord had cursed.
So remember what we read in Genesis chapter 3. Noah's going to bring some kind of relief. Really? I didn't know that. Now, what was their staple diet back in Genesis chapter 1? What did he say I gave you for your diet? Plant. Well, what kind of plants? Seed-bearing plants, right? And fruits that have seeds, right? And then now after the disobedience, now he has to work the ground, getting stuck with thorns and thistles. And now here comes the Lamech saying, my son is going to bring us relief. Wow, that's deep.
It is.
Okay, that's interesting. So we all know about the story about the flood and everything like that, right? We know about the story of the flood, right? Most of y'all know it, right? Yes? No? Raise your hand. Okay, so I don't need to get into that. If not, you can go back and read on that. But here's something that's very interesting. After the flood subsided, there was, well, not even, before the flood happened, let's go to Genesis chapter 7.
All right.
We'll go to verse 1.
Genesis chapter 7, verse 1.
What does it say?
And the Lord said unto Noah, come thou all thy house into the ark.
Wait, come all your house into the ark. Keep going.
For thee have seen righteousness before me in this generation.
Now, what verse is that? So 1 or 2?
That's 1.
Okay, keep going. Read up to 2.
Verse 2. Of every clean beast.
Wait. Hold on. I'm sorry. I didn't get to keep.
No.
Every what beast?
He said clean beast.
Wait, what you mean clean beast? Clean beast?
You know, must have some dirty.
Noah, what you mean about what is clean? What you mean clean beast? So Noah knew about a clean animal?
No.
What? Read the rest of that. Read the rest of that.
And of every clean beast
thou
shalt take of thee by 7.
Now I wonder why he told them to take these clean beasts. Keep going.
The male and his female. And of the beast that thou art not clean by 2.
Okay, so now I'm telling you to bring more of the clean and a little less of the unclean. And there's a reason for that. Deep, keep going.
Okay. By 2. The male and his female. Of the fowls also of the air by 7. The male and the female.
Now slow down. Now the root word for that word clean there is tahor. And that has to do with something that could be ceremonial or something that's been declared as clean. So now we know at this point, Noah wasn't eating any animals because he would have adhered to the original diet that the Most High set forth through Adam, right? So why is he telling him take the clean and then telling him now for the unclean do this? Oh, that's deep. He got this information somewhere, somehow. Keep going.
To keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth.
Now that's verse 3, right?
That's verse 3.
Okay. Now you can read verse 4 just so we can have context.
Okay. For yet 7 days I will cause it to rain upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. And of every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth.
And that was a consequence of man. Because of man, now the earth has to suffer. Think about that. Even today, because of us, this planet has to suffer. Because it was our rightful role to do our part to ensure that we are the studious and we are the astute caretakers of the hands of the work of the hands of the Creator. And a lot of times we take that for granted. Go to verse 7.
Verse 7. And Noah went in, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with them into the ark, because of the waters of the flood.
Read verse 8.
Of the clean beasts.
Of the clean beasts.
Of the clean
Again?
beasts.
Okay, keep going.
And of the beasts that are not clean. And of the fowls. And of everything that creepeth upon the earth.
Next verse.
There went in two unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah.
So now we're establishing that there is some kind of tahor or some kind of cleanliness of certain animals that have been identified during that time. So you have what's called the taxonomy of animals. Taxonomy is a way of classifying animals, right, in scientific literature, right? Here, there's another way in which animals are also classified. And if you start to read this, you understand that this is the handiwork of some kind of priest. because this term that's being used here is replete later on in the literature, but we see it in sparse places here in the beginning. So some kind of priest that had the understanding of this went back to redact this area to make sure that it's understood that this idea of clean and unclean was before the so-called Mosaic law. Because you have people that say that, oh, it's only in the Mosaic law that you know about clean and unclean. Say, wait a second, let's get Genesis or better sheet and read that. Clean and unclean is there. So they got to step back and think about this now. That messes the entire dietary scheme up with people that say, oh, that's just Mosaic law, that's Moses' law. Wait, but it's right here. This is Noah. Moses wasn't even on the scene yet.
Right.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's get Genesis chapter 8.
Right.
Let's go to verse 20.
All right. Genesis 8, verse 20.
Okay.
And Noah built an altar unto the Lord.
Now he built an altar. Okay, keep going.
And took every clean beast.
Wait a second. Whoa. Slow down. He built an altar and took what?
Every clean beast.
Clean beast. Keep going.
And of every clean fowl. And offered burnt.
So the offerings he gave was from clean beasts and clean fowl? Where did he get this information from? I thought this only came from the Mosaic law. Wait, what is that? Is that the book of Numbers that we're reading in Deuteronomy?
This is Genesis.
Wait, that's Leviticus, right?
No, this is Genesis.
Exodus?
No, this is Genesis. Bad sheet.
I mean, this is what people were telling me, so I'm thinking maybe he's reading the wrong thing. All right, so he sacrificed on an altar clean animals.
Clean animals.
No unclean animals.
Clean animals. That's what it
Is
says.
that the rest of the verse?
No,
Keep going.
and offer burnt offerings on the altar.
And he offered what kind of offerings?
Burnt offerings.
Where do you know about a burnt offering from? Wait, you sure Moses is not there tucked in the bushes somewhere watching this?
No, he didn't read the burnt. He had the time machine. He went
He
forward.
came back. Oh, that's what
He
it
got
was.
the law from Moses.
And then he went back. Okay, double back. That's what it is. I missed the movie. So this is interesting. So he knew what was clean and unclean, and he also knew how to build an offering and give a burnt offering.
Right.
That's deep. Out of only clean animals. So therefore, this was before Moses.
Way before.
That's deep. All right, that's interesting. Let's get Genesis chapter 9. I just want y'all to see these things before we get to Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. All right, so you can go ahead and read that.
Genesis chapter 9, verse 1.
Keep going.
And God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply.
Wait, I heard that before, right?
Yeah, I heard that.
So now we have a situation where he's like, I'm going to do a clean slate, give y'all another opportunity to get this job done. But in order for you to reach everywhere to do it, you got to do what?
Be fruitful and multiply.
All right, keep going.
Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth.
Keep going.
And the fear of you and the dread of you.
Wait, the fear of you now and the dread. Because it was because of mankind, all these consequences happened. So now the earth is going to respond to this stimuli in the environment. Keep going.
All right. And the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every fowl of the air.
Think about this. Keep going.
Upon all that moveth upon the earth and upon the fish of the sea.
Keep going.
Into your hand are they delivered.
Wow. What verse is that you was at?
That was verse 2.
Keep going. Go to verse 4.
Skip to verse 4, go to verse 3.
Go to verse 3.
Okay, verse 3. Every moving thing that liveth.
Now slow down. Pay attention now. Every moving thing that liveth. Keep going.
Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat.
Shall be what?
Meat.
Interesting. Keep going.
For you. Even as the green herb, I have given you all things.
What verse is that? 4?
That's the end of 3.
Okay, keep going. Verse 4.
But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat.
So where did this come from? So now listening to this, there's something later on in the text that sounds similar, right? Cain, Khan, yes, confirm. So now he's saying that now the dread of every animal is going to be upon you, but now I'm giving it to you as food, as I have given you the plants that bear seed and the fruits that bear seed. So you're telling me the comfort that Noah brought was through his obedience. Yah has now extended a dietary law during that time from the plants now to animals. So now man doesn't only solely have to toil the earth. Now he's allotted a portion to now eat from the animals that exist. That was the comfort that Noah brought to man. That's deep.
It is.
Because I never thought about this before, so I slowed down and thought about it. I said, wow, that's pretty heavy right there.
Right.
And that was the comfort, because now Yah said, because of obedience, now I'm going to do this. But now, Noah, you may think that's all fine and dandy, but now the dread of these animals is going to be upon you. So you're going to have to hunt these animals for food now. They ain't just going to walk up to you and let you slaughter them and eat them. You're going to have to hunt and put in that work. But now, to give you some balance from just toiling and getting stuck by thorns and thistles, now I'm going to send it out to hunting. Yes.
No, I'm saying, this might sound like a dumb question, but he said, which
No
is the
dumb
love
questions.
thereof.
Uh-huh.
So you got eat, so it means that we have to cook it.
There you go. So now there's some limitations on how you're to eat these animals, because raw meat, I don't know if anybody has studied this, but if you eat raw meat, you take in a host of bacteria and a host of other parasites that can kill you. So it was, so you think about it, like the development of mankind in science and anthropology, mankind, in order for him to survive and thrive, had to devise a way to cook food, because he's watching everybody else around him eat raw food and die.
Right.
And saying, damn, how they just dying like that? Wait a second, we learned about fire, let's use this thing, start cooking food, and we living longer. So maybe this is the reason why we need to do this. Now, why does man have to be the only animal on the planet to cook his food to eat it? Think about that. Man is the only animal on the planet that uses fire to cook food. Did you ever notice
Never
that?
thought about that.
I don't think anybody. I didn't even thought about that. But I was like, what? And it's because our original diet was what?
Herbs.
That's why. And if you ask any dentist about the makeup of the teeth of people, you can say, if you look at the mouth of man over time, is his mouth conducive to consuming plants or consuming animals? They'll tell you that initially we were eating, we were gatherers, we were picking up nuts and seeds and eating fruits and vegetables, but then over time, opportunity presented itself that we started to hunt. So then we started to consume meat over time, but because it wasn't part of our original diet, we had to cook it. That's deep.
Yeah.
So now you think about this culture that's trying to recollect this information and trying to give an anthropogenic story behind their evolution or their emergence. You see that they're in sync, at least with the literature, of how science dictates how we evolved as people. Think about that. That's deep. Okay. But we're still in the book of Genesis, right? So think about this. If clean and unclean was differentiated at that time, but now it's said you can eat all living things, why would the clean and unclean be mentioned? Maybe because somebody was still keeping that diet at that time.
Right.
That's interesting. Because when we go and we look at the progenitors of Noah, we have his sons. Who's his three sons?
Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
All right. And then we see something interesting about Shem, where there's a blessing that's bestowed upon him, that the God of Shem will be blessed, etc. And then we see a situation where more people that's coming out that lineage, somebody pops up later on that comes from that lineage that is now extending that information on. So therefore, the priest of the lineage of Noah came through the loins of Shem. Therefore, the clean and unclean understanding would be encapsulated through the lineage of Shem. People say, man, you bugging out. What is you talking about? Well, when we get to Abraham, I want to show you something before we deal with Abraham, right? As we progress forward. Did y'all know that Abraham kept all the statutes, laws, and commandments?
Anybody know that?
Raise your hand. Let me know if y'all know that. Did y'all know that he kept all of the statutes, the laws, and commandments? You're going to be like, Devon, what is you talking about? Somebody, please somebody say that. Somebody say, what are you talking about? I taught this was only came through Moses. That's what I was taught. They only came through Moses.
Abraham kept the law.
So let's we're gonna get this. Give me Genesis chapter 26.
Genesis 26.
And let's go to verse 5. So the next time somebody tell you that stuff is only through Moses, give them another reference. Read that.
Genesis 26, verse 5.
Maybe you could jump up to verse 4 for context.
Oh, okay. Genesis 26, verse 4.
What does it say?
And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven.
Okay.
And I will give unto thy seed all these countries.
Okay, so now this is the Most High speaking to Isaac. Keep going.
And in thy seed
In your seed, go ahead.
shall all the nations of the earth be blessed.
Now, this was something that his father was told, right? But now it's being reconfirmed with him. Now, keep reading.
Okay. Because Abraham.
Because Abraham. What did he do?
Obeyed my voice.
And what did he do? No. It was just on faith. He just believed.
No, he
obeyed his voice. And he just moved from one place to another. That was all he did.
He obeyed.
But he did more than that?
He obeyed.
And what else did he do?
Obeyed my voice.
And did what?
And kept my charge.
Kept your charge.
My commandments.
Your commandments. Uh-huh.
My statutes.
Your statutes.
And my law.
And your what?
And my law. Somebody
look up that Hebrew word for law there. It's not mitzvah or mitzvot, which means what we can say means law. There's another word there. This is interesting. Now remember, Noah knew something. He was doing something according to some kind of code that he knew about. And now it's being passed down through his lineage, through Shem. And look up that word for laws there. What is that word? Anybody can look it up.
Okay. Torah.
Wait, what?
Torah.
The what?
Torah.
So you saying that Abraham did what? Kept the Torah? Nah, man, that came through Moses. That only came through Moses, my brother. I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
I don't know what he's talking about.
What are you talking about? And Torah? So Abraham kept the Torah?
So was the Torah given from the beginning?
Hey, I'm just showing you the breadcrumbs. It's not for me to come to these conclusions. That's up to you. I'm just introducing you to the material so that way you can go back and do your research.
So when you're trying to have a dialogue with most Christians, and they'll refer back to Abraham, and they'll highlight, that Abraham has done everything by faith. But in this verse, it shows you that Abraham had works, that it wasn't just by faith. God just said he obeyed my laws, my statutes, and my commandments. So it wasn't just by faith alone.
Facts. Say that again. It wasn't by faith what?
It just wasn't by faith alone.
Wow, that's deep.
What works as
that's
well.
Deep. Somebody want to say something?
No, I think it's what you get at. That it was the actual culture before it was.
Wow. It was just the way you lived.
It's a culture.
But religion now is putting constraints and saying, "Oh, that's just your religion." No. This was intended. That's why I said when you study the culture of the people who was the author was all Israelites, right?
Right.
And the intended audience was Israelites, right?
Israelites.
And they're writing about their culture. This was something they was doing every day. So for an outsider to come and say, "Oh, that's wrong," but wait, where you getting your information from? The same book that was given to me by my ancestors, and what I'm doing is wrong? That sounds crazy.
So those of y'all who have family members that's still stuck in Christianity, and when they talk about the faith of Abraham, make sure y'all highlight. I'm serious.
Wow, the Abraham had many sons.
And show them that it wasn't just by faith alone. They're screwing up Paul's works.
There you go. They'll just say, "Oh, well, Abraham just believed by faith, and that was it." Really? Mm-hmm. But wait, we're reading in the text where it says he kept the charges, the commandments, the statutes, and the Torah. Okay. That's just a little backdrop so you know what he was working with. Now, somebody in the chat brought up Genesis chapter 6, verse 9, which is interesting. It says, "These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and was perfect in his generations, and Noah walked." That word walk there, the root word is halak, but here is halakah, but it's in what's called the hitpayo stem in Hebrew. Now, all that means is that it's not in the literal sense where I'm walking side by side with you, but we rolling together, meaning that you with me every day. If I say that my man walked with me through thick and thin, right, he didn't literally walk through no thick and thin with me. Right. It just means he was there with me. Right. I had a relationship with this person. Right. My wife was there through thick and thin. In a marriage, you did through thick and thin. That person walked. So he had a relationship with the Creator. So now instructions are being given to him. So he knows what's clean and unclean. He knows how to build an altar, how to make a sacrifice. He learned this by walking with the Most High.
Right.
That's interesting.
It's real deep.
Deep. Okay, so we missed these little details, but it's there in the text. Mm-hmm. So let's jump back to the stream that we were following in regards to this information. It's about to get deeper than this. So when we go to Genesis chapter 9, we see the extension there, right? We jump down to Abraham. Now, by the time we get to Abraham, we see that mankind again has fallen. Because now mankind is trying to build an edifice to reach up to the heavenly realm so that he can become his own power. And because of that, mankind was dispersed. So mankind, again, even after the flood judgment, is still doing wickedness and things they're not supposed to be doing. So now what we see as a theme is the Most High is calling a person out, setting them apart, giving them a duty, calling a person out, setting them apart, giving them a duty, but allows them through their seed to be fruitful and multiply, to continue to carry out the duty in their absence and in reaches that they probably cannot get to. So now we see another situation while another person is called out, and we know his name is Abraham, because mankind fell into perdition after being given dominion again. So it's the second time they were given dominion and they're still not doing the right thing. So a third example is about to arise in regards to this. So let's go to Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 to 7. And then I'm going to show you something very interesting in Genesis chapter 15 that I think almost everybody I've encountered has missed. And I'm sure most of you have missed this too, but I'm going to bring it to your attention. So read Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 to 7 for context, so we know what we're dealing with.
Okay. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Now the Lord said unto Abraham, get out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house and unto a land that I will show thee.
Okay.
And I will make thee a great nation.
Okay.
And I will bless thee.
Okay.
And I will make thy name great. And thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee.
Okay.
And I will curse him that curse thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed.
Keep going.
So Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken unto him. And Lot went with him.
Okay, what verse you at?
Verse 4.
Okay. So verse 4, you can finish verse, go to verse 7. That's fine.
Okay, 7.
So Lot went with him, even though he said, leave everybody behind. He still took Lot with
Still
him.
took Lot.
That's another message that I did before, but keep going.
And the Lord appeared unto Abraham and said,
Now watch this part. Keep going.
unto thy seed I will give this land.
Wait. So now I'm going to give land again. So the first time man was given land through Adam, right? And through his seed, fruitful, multiply. The second time, the land was given to Noah after everything's been wiped off through his seed to fruitful and multiply. Now a third time, damn, man is just not getting this thing right.
Right.
And we wonder why the earth is in the condition the way it is today. Keep going.
And there builded he an altar unto the Lord.
So he made an altar, go ahead.
Who had appeared unto him. And he removed thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel.
Okay.
Bethel.
What verse you at?
8.
Okay, stop there.
Okay.
All right. Let's go to Genesis 15, verse 16. Well, actually, you know what? Let's go to Genesis 15, verse 7 to 11.
All right. Genesis 15, 7 to 11.
Uh-huh.
All right. And he said unto them,
What did he say?
I am the Lord that brought you out of your land of Ur of the Chaldees.
Okay.
To give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, where be shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, take me an heifer of 3 years old.
Take a what?
A heifer
of 3 years old.
Of 3 years old.
That's interesting because that sounds like something that I read much later on. But keep going.
And a she-goat of 3 years old.
Of 3 years old.
And a ram of 3 years old.
And do what?
And a turtle dove. And a young pigeon.
Keep going.
And he took unto him.
Now slow down. Check this out. Keep going.
And he took unto him all these and divided them in the midst.
And cut them in half. Keep going.
And laid each piece one against the other, but the birds divided he not.
Interesting. Where is these instructions coming from?
No clue.
That's deep. But remember it said that Abraham kept the Torah.
He did.
So he kept certain instructions.
Right.
This is deep because this is stuff that we see priests doing much later on. So he took these animals, except for the birds, he cut these animals in half. Did it say he made an altar earlier? Did we read the word altar there?
Yeah.
So he made an altar, cut these. Why is he making an altar and cutting these animals in half? Anybody, raise your hand. It's going to get deep. Why is he just taking animals, certain kinds of animals, certain age, cutting them in half on an altar and just leaving them split in half. Think about it. That's deep. A lot of times I know people read this and don't pay no mind. What verse was that you ended at? Verse 11?
Verse 10 I finished.
Go to verse 11.
And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses,
The fowls. Go ahead.
Abraham drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abraham.
Now stop it. So now the sun is going down, sleep is going on him, and he just did this task, not even know why am I cutting these things in half. Now listen to this. Does anybody know what the word berith means in Hebrew? Berith. So in Hebrew, it's going to be Beit Resh Yod Tav, or Brith. It's in the first stanza, the first verse of the scriptures, right? That word bara is there. That's the root word, which is Beit Resh Aleph, or B-A-R-A, bara. And we say that word bara means to create. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The word for create there is bara. I say that is a bad translation. And we're gonna find out why it's a bad translation once we understand what berith is. So berith comes from the word bara, which means to cut asunder, cut in half, because that's what he did. Now watch this. He cut these animals in half. There's fowls that's coming, vultures that's coming to try and eat the stuff that he's cut, that's dead, that's cut. He's shooing them away. Nightfall is coming. He goes to sleep. He gets a dream, vision, or whatever. Now we're gonna find out what that word berith means. Watch this. I'm gonna show you what happens before we define it.
Okay.
Go to verse 16 to 20.
Okay.
Read verse 16.
But in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again.
That's 15, 16.
Yeah, it's 15 and 16.
Verse 16. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 16.
Uh-huh.
But in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again.
To the land that he said I was going to give you. Keep going.
Right. For the iniquity of the Amorites.
Okay, this is another part. Iniquity of the Amorites. So wickedness is happening, and what is not yet.
Yeah, it is not yet full.
So before judgment can commence this, and there's some kind of activity going on in that region that needs to be purged. The same thing that happened with the flood. Keep going.
And it came to pass that when the sun went down.
It came to pass when the sun went down.
The sun went down.
What happened?
And it was dark.
Watch this, family. Watch this.
Behold, a smoking furnace.
A smoking furnace.
And a burning lamp.
A burning lamp.
That passed between those pieces.
Whoa, wait a second. So now nightfall is happening. A lamp and a what else? It said?
A lamp
and before,
a burning furnace.
A burning furnace did what? It
smoking furnace.
Passed through the cut pieces.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck does that mean? Why is this happening? Keep going.
In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham.
The same day he made a covenant after he was told to cut these two things, several things in half on an altar, leave it alone, go to sleep. While you're sleeping, it's getting dark. Now some kind of lamp is coming between these pieces. This is deep. Remember I said that word berith? Okay, keep going.
Abraham saying, unto thy seed I have given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the Euphrates.
All right, slow down. So now people are going to say, well, what does that have to do with anything? What does that mean? A lot of times we will read the text and just skim right over it. How many of y'all have ever read that before? Maybe two. How many of y'all know what that means? Right? But this is what happens when you're not taught about the culture. When you're not taught about the culture, you disregard these things. Now, I'm reading from a lexicon, right? So a lexicon is a dictionary of the original languages. So if you was looking up a word, and I said look up the word covenant, you have to look it up in Hebrew. And I gave you the word for covenant. Berith is the word for covenant. And the root word comes from the word bara. So a lexicon will actually have it where it's spelled out. Beit Resh Yod Tav. And when you read it here, it tells you that this is an agreement or a covenant between two parties. And it consisted of the cutting of sacrificial animals and the passing through of one party through the cutting of the sacrificial animals. Wait a second, slow down. One party cuts the animals in half, separates the pieces, and the other party comes and passes through, and that signifies the closing of an agreement or a contractual arbitration between two parties in ancient times. So we thought this covenant was just verbal. No, this was sealed through an ancient custom of cutting an animal in half by one party and the second party passing through. This is how they engaged in covenants during that time. Sure. So if we was going to the Strongs, let me grab the Strongs because the Strongs are not tied to the lexicon. But anybody can look it up. Go to, what was it? 1285. And when you get into it, it's like, whoa, like I never realized it keeps going to enter into an agreement, to enter into a covenant, to accept someone into a formal agreement. In order for the terms and conditions to be solidified, Yah told Abraham what to do. He said, you got to cut these animals in half because before I can give you anything, I have to ensure that now I'm sealing this covenant by me passing through. This is deep. The Most High passed through in some form, passed through the animals to confirm the covenant. And then now we see later on in the text, it says, now he reveals himself in some way and appears unto Abraham, and Abraham brings him into his home. Remember that? That's a little bit later on. But before he can even do any of that, he had to first confirm the agreement. Before any contract can go into action, you have to seal the deal. You have to sign a signature. This is how they signed signatures on contracts back then.
Sign your nature.
There you go. That's when we get deeper into what signature is. This is what they're doing. So now the compact is there. Now the agreement has been sealed through an ancient custom that most of us are not even privy of because we were never taught culture. We was only taught religion. So why is any of this important now? Because remember, he kept the statutes, the commandments, the Torah, and the charge. Right. What does this have to do with the diet? Well, we know what clean and unclean. There's certain animals that he's taking and sacrificing, not unclean animals, clean animals. Right. No one knew about these also clean and unclean animals too. All of this stuff is deep because mankind had an idea of what animals you're supposed to deal with, what animals you're supposed to leave alone. And there's a reason for that. We're about to get real deeper. We have almost halfway through this. Let's get, okay, so we're going to leave Abraham alone for now. Let's sail over to Moses. Now, before we even got to Moshe, I saw a lot of stuff in there that Christians told me were only tied to Moses. Right. And this is no shot to Christians because I hope they're hearing this because this is still informational for them as well because of the miseducation given to some of them. But with this information that's happening there and before Moses, now we're getting to Moshe. So now you see the template that the Most High is now rebuilding or reconstructing because this information was lost when the caretakers of this data went into captivity. Are you following me? So this is nothing new that he's bringing out. This is only a reconfirmation and reconstruction and restoration of things that were already going on that they had lost when they went into captivity. All right. So let's get Exodus chapter 3, verse 7 to 8. And we're right at the cusp of going into this dietary law. Like, what is this dietary law? Because we first heard what the first diet was, and then added on to that was the meat section in order to give you comfort from toiling the land. And then we knew about clean and unclean animals. So somebody kept some kind of dietary law. Right. Now we go into a situation where now those descendants are going into captivity. Now they're crying out. Now Moshe is utilized as a vessel to bring them out. But before he can bring them into the land, he first has to reconfirm the covenant and give them the instructions again. That's all Torah means is instructions. So keep going.
Okay.
Exodus chapter 3, verse 7 says what?
Exodus chapter 3, verse 7. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt. And I have heard their cry by reason and of their taskmasters.
And what verse is that?
Verse 7. For I know their sorrows. Verse 8. And I am come down to deliver them.
Wait. Now, please slow down for a second. Who's this speaking here? Who's this speaking? Who's the speaker right now? This is how you do proper midrash or proper hermeneutics or exegesis. We have to identify who the speaker is and then look who the audience. Who's the speaker? Who's saying this? The Most High saying this, right? He said he's going to do what? He's going to come down. Wait, slow down. Wait, slow down.
He was sitting right
I
there.
think people miss this part. He said he gonna come down and deliver them personally.
Come down.
I missed that before. I never paid attention to that before. He gonna come down?
Yeah.
That shows you how intimate he is. Whenever you cry for help, he's gonna come down and he's gonna work with you through it. He doesn't want to take you out of the process. He wants you to be made and refined through it. Because the reward is not what happens afterwards. The reward is what you gain in the midst of it. That's just for somebody. So I'm gonna help somebody. Keep going. I ain't trying to preach today, but go ahead, keep going.
And I am come down to deliver them out of the hands of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and a large, and unto a land flowing with milk and honey.
Milk and honey. These were symbolic of two different things. Okay. And what verse is that you at?
I'm still at verse 8.
Okay. Are you finished?
No.
Finish and then jump to verse 16.
All right. The milk and honey unto a place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the can't pronounce that. Hittites and the Jebusites.
Okay. Verse 16.
I want to see
Sure.
what the symbolic on when you said a land of milk and honey.
A land of milk and honey. So where does milk come from?
The mother.
We would say cows, right? But during that time, they would have cattle, but they would also have goats, right? And so milk. So milk was considered the sustenance that young goats, young cows, and young children would get. So the milk was representative of that word Shaddai. So in Hebrew, Shaddai is a word, the root word is shed, which means breast, concrete. So when we look at the epithet or the attribute for Shaddai, we have the yod suffix, which is the possessive construct, which means El, who's the deity, is the possessor of that initial root word, which is shed, meaning the breast, because the purpose of the epithet El Shaddai is to show you that El, which means power, I am the power that is giving sustenance to the creation. The mother was responsible for helping to create the child. And in order for the child to live, the mother has to give sustenance to that child by means of breast milk. So the child can grow strong and be mighty. So the creator, El Shaddai, had to give sustenance to Abraham through the covenant. Now he's allowing him to multiply and to grow. And the milk evidence is referring to the sustenance that the creator will continuously give Israel so they can grow from being in a young, immature state to a very older, mature state. Are you following me? So that's the maturity aspect. The milk is helping you to grow. But then you wean off at some point, right? So now once you get mature enough, after you wean off the milk, the honey is there to show you that now I'm going to supplement that milk with something that is sweet. So you know that the things that I reward you with is if you do what you're supposed to do, you can take delight in consuming it. That's the represent or the symbolic meaning of the milk and the honey, which they would receive when they go on a land. So these physical things in a concrete environment had one meaning, and then the layered meaning on top of that is how the Yah is going to keep them and sustain them as long as they obey, because their forefather made a contractual agreement so that way this can take place. All right. And what verse were you at? You didn't go to 16 yet, right? All right. So jump into 16.
Jump to 16.
All
right. Verse 16. Go gather the elders of Israel together. And say unto them,
what?
The Lord God of your fathers, and the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, appeared unto me, saying, I have surely visited you, and seen that which is done unto you in Egypt.
So I visited you because he had to come down to go and visit them. Keep going.
And I have said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt unto the land of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and unto a land flowing with milk and honey.
And what verse is that?
That was verse 17.
Okay, so stop there. All right, so now we have a situation where sometimes we can have a trial in our life and don't see no help coming from anywhere. And you know what I tell people? That's because when you take a test, the teacher's silent. That's for somebody. The teacher is there to see if you're applying everything that he raised you with to take care of that test. And then after the test is over, then he'll greet you with confirmation that you made it. You did it. The teacher never talks during the test. It's always quiet. But sometimes the teacher can come up and get a front row seat when a student is performing and the student is doing what they're supposed to do. I'm gonna leave that alone. That's for somebody. Sometimes some people out here may think that the Most High ain't listening to nothing that's going on with me right now. And I want to tell you that He is listening, but there's a test period. And when you're taking that test, He's quiet for now. Because He trusted that you're going to take care of your part and He'll meet you halfway. All right, that's just a little bit nugget in case somebody needed that on today, right? So let's move forward, right? So it's like, what does all this backdrop information have to do with the dietary law? Okay, I know you want to rush into it. I was just trying to build the ecology so you can see how these animals and these plants all need each other to survive. There was an ecosystem that everything was thriving in during that period of time. Mankind failed to continuously be the caretaker over these items. So now we have a situation where Yah says, let me restore this identity of a diet. Right. So let's get to that. This is the fun part, right? Okay. So let's get to actually before we get that, let's go to Leviticus chapter 10. This is before He gives the dietary law. Leviticus chapter 10, verse 10. So let's get to
Leviticus chapter 10, verse 10. And that ye may put difference between holy and unholy, and between clean and unclean.
Clean and unclean. Now, sometimes in some cultures, taboos are created to keep a particular group of people from crossing over a boundary that was set for their protection. Somebody look up the definition of taboo. Anybody, you can grab it up. Tell me the definition of taboo. Yes.
You said taboo?
Yes.
A social or religious custom prohibiting or forbidding discussion of a particular practice or forbidding association with a particular person, place, or thing. Excellent.
So it is something that forbids a particular practice, and what else? Read what you read again.
Practice or forbidding association with a person.
Or forbidding an association. Keep going.
A particular person, place, or thing.
Now, it's a lot of times that in this culture, we have taboos of things that's in the Old Testament. They keep you away from it. Why? This is deep. I'm about to show you something heavy. Taboos are sometimes created for good reasons and bad reasons. It can be a good reason because, let's say, for example, there's a child that I know I was raising and they watch scary movies or cartoons like monsters, right? And I want to keep that child from crossing the street and get hit by a car. I'll tell that child, listen, if you don't look both ways before you cross that street, a monster's going to come out there and eat you. Now, is a monster really going to come out and eat that child? More than likely not. But it's a means of keeping that child in a situation where I'm able to protect them by using something symbolic to prevent them from doing a practice that may otherwise bring harm or danger to them. So if I'm creating a religion and there are certain parts of the text where my religion stems from that can really contradict that religion, then there's certain things that I'm going to set up to prevent you from reading, knowing, investigating in there, because otherwise it will become detrimental to the growth of that religion. Even though the religion thrives on the entire book, but there are certain things it just doesn't put emphasis on, and certain things that become taboo because they want you to think it's simply religious. When no, if you don't study the culture, even if you have a religion, you need to know the culture to know everything behind the religion, so you don't impose your own contemporary views onto what the authors have written. And we do that a lot. That's with anything. So when we get there and we read where we at right now, we in Leviticus chapter 10, and we see that he's saying you must put a difference between that which is kodesh or set apart and that which is not kodesh, that which is clean to hoard and that which is not clean. They're expected to do these things because it seems like from a person on the outside, that's a taboo. Right. The deity is telling you what you can or can't do. Right. That's what I was told, but that's not what was going on here. Because when we read what Torah is, when we went over this, right? Go to Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8. I shared a nugget with him when we were driving, but I'm going to have it shared with you too. Because Torah is something extremely simple that when you understand it, you throw religion out the window. It's gone. You bury it. It's extremely simple. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8. What does that say?
Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8.
Now, this is the father speaking to his son. Okay, go ahead.
My son, Hear the instruction of thy father.
Hear the instructions of your father.
And forsake not the law of thy mother.
Slow down. Somebody get the word for law there. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8 you just read, right? That's what you read, right? Okay. So we're going to see in very simple terms what is... Somebody got it. Somebody already said it.
Yeah.
The what?
Torah.
So read, wait. Read that again. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8 says
My
what?
son, hear the instructions of thy
So that word here is Shema, Beni, hear my son, Musar, Abika, right? Ab is what in Hebrew? Father, right? Abi, your father. Ka is a suffix for your father, right? We'al, and not titos, don't forsake, Torat, Ima or Imeka. Ima is what? Mother. Ka is a suffix meaning your mother. So wait, listen to the instruction. Well, let me see that word instruction there in Hebrew. It means the chastening, the correction, and the discipline. Don't hate the discipline, the correction, and the reproof from your father, and do not forsake the Torah from your mother, the instruction from your mother. So wait, so you tell me the mom has a very integral role in the household where she brings the Torah to the child? Wait, let's rewind. Because I think our women need to understand how important their role is. Right. But when he says discipline, why do you discipline a child? Anybody tell me, why do you discipline a child? They can know better. But what do you set in place? Say that again. So the father's job is to set boundaries that he creates so he can protect the child as they're operating within those boundaries of protection. If the child crosses over those boundaries, then the father's job is to discipline or correct that child to stay within the boundaries, but the mother's job is to provide the instructions on how the child is supposed to be cultivated within those boundaries of protection. Damn. All right. So let me say that's deep, because now when you understand this, it lets you understand what the respective roles are of the children. So the father's job is to protect, and not just protect, to provide, but he can only protect and provide that which is within his boundaries of provision and protection. And in order to ensure those protection and provision boundaries are met, the mother must cultivate the child how to navigate and operate within those boundaries of provision and protection. That's all Torah is. Yah is creating boundaries of protection and provision for the children of Israel, provided they obey the instructions on how to operate once they're in there. Because how many of y'all can, I don't know if y'all can attest to this, it didn't really happen to me, but it happened to family members, friends that I've had, and family members, where when that child becomes unruly, the mother or father kicks them right outside the house. Say, you think you grown? Right. Go out there and live that grown life. Right. Because I gave you food, I gave you shelter, I put clothes on your back, I paid for your tuition, I took care of you, me and your father, while you was in this household. Now you 16, 17, 18, 19, you think you grown? Go out there and be an adult. So now they get expelled out the home, and now they're outside the boundaries of protection from the parents. Now, can the parents still reach out, protect, and guide that child? Yes, but they have no oversight. Because now that child is outside their boundaries of protection, of discipline, because now the parents are not there to discipline when something happens. So now with the children of Israel, because they disobeyed, now they were kicked out the boundaries of protection, because as long as they stayed in the land, God was obligated to protect the children of Israel. Mm-hmm. So now he had to kick them out the house because they think they're grown. Because they want to follow everybody else. The number one thing he said, do not imitate the things of the nations around you, because they're doing it. Parents tell you the same thing. I don't care if Charlie and them are doing whatever, and LaQuisha and them doing what. I don't care. But in this house, this is what I want you to do. And you go thinking you're going to do what they're going to do. They say, you know what? Why don't you go live with so-and-so and so-and-so? And you stay over there for 2 weeks. You ready to run back home. That's how simple Torah is. And when you explain this at this simplistic level with the building blocks to understand what culture is, you release a person from all the religious dogma that ties them down to looking at this from the wrong vantage point. That's it. All right, so let's get back to where we go. I know that was a little nugget for y'all. I was trying to just throw something out there for somebody, but let's get back to the text. So now the instructions are being reconfirmed. Now we get to the fun part, right? Let's go to Leviticus chapter 11. Now here is the zenith of this discussion. And everything tapers off from here. And then once I give you the life application, now we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about everything that we said. I need input for y'all so it can help me to grow, be able to answer questions for y'all. We're going to have a great time after this, all right? Now, before we get into this part, is anybody hungry? Do y'all want to get some food first? We can come back, take a 10-minute break, 10, 15 minutes. You want to keep going? Y'all let me know. Seriously, how many of y'all want to eat? Raise your hand. Damn. There was like hunger? I didn't even realize I was hungry. What are you talking about? Yeah, right. So, all right. So let's wait. So after I get through this, then I'm still going to take a break so we can get something, right? So let's get Leviticus chapter 11. Now, a lot of y'all are probably familiar with this, right? But we're going to see how does this diet play a role with the ecology of the environment, okay? So let's go and get Leviticus chapter 11. Start at verse 1.
And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, These are the beasts which ye shall eat among the beasts that are on the earth. Whatsoever parteth the hoof, and is cloven footed, and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that shall ye eat.
Okay, so now he's saying what? Say it again.
Whatsoever had parted the hoof, and is cloven footed, and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that shall ye eat.
So now he's telling them that which has a what?
Cloven footed.
Right. And what else? Parted the hoof. And what?
And cheweth the cud.
And cheweth the cud, that you can what?
Those
that you can eat. So now he's not telling you have to eat it, but those you can eat. So you can still be a vegan and be an Israelite. You're not being told that you have to, but if you do resort to meat, why? Because it's the way the food is processed. How many of y'all know that cows have multiple stomachs? Raise your hand if you knew about that. Why? Somebody Google it. Why do cows have multiple stomachs? This is extremely important because this helps to identify why certain animals are designed for us to eat and why we should not eat. Because if you eat certain animals whose internal anatomy is not in alignment with allowing the food to break down properly, so that way the food that you eat from it or the meat that you eat from it can give you real sustenance, then what you're doing is not only doing a disservice to your own body, but now you're doing a disservice to the environment by eating those animals that they're being told that you should refrain from. So anybody can read. Why do cows have multiple stomachs? Anybody?
He says that cows actually...
Well, like for digestive reasons.
Keep going. Excellent. Keep going.
Well, it says they don't have multiple stomachs.
Wait, what?
3 extra esophageal, 4 stomachs.
There you go. 4 stomach chambers. Keep going.
Designed to partially chew plant material, they gaze and break it all down into a much more simpler component to be absorbed into their bloodstream for their bodily requirements.
Now, excellent. Now, just for a point of reference, let's go to porcine or swine or pig. How many stomachs or esophageal 4 stomachs do they have? Somebody read it. Pig, swine, porcine, pork. You're going to see. Let's see how their digestion occurs. Yes.
One stomach. Pigs are.
They have 1 stomach, you said?
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
Pigs are monogastric animals, which means they have 1 stomach.
Monogastric animals. That means they have 1 stomach. Keep going.
Compared to 4 in cows.
Compared to 4 and what? Cows. We just read, right? Keep going.
They are omnivores, indicating they are anatomically designed.
Now slow down. How many of y'all knew they were omnivores? What's an omnivore? Because we're supposed to be omnivore. Eat plants, animals. You're opportunistic eater, right? Okay, keep going.
Indicating that anatomically designed to handle food from both animal and plant origins. So their digestive system is very similar to that of humans.
To humans, right? Now, this is very interesting because a lot of experiments take place on pigs because their anatomy internally is similar to humans, right? Now that's very interesting. Another thing is to know is that, you know, people try to learn about the sweat glands, right? Do pigs actually have sweat glands? They do, but they're very few, to the point where a lot of excrement that will come through the pores cannot fully exit it out of pigs. So a lot of times they have to go elsewhere. They have a drainage for that. And a lot of times they go into the mud because they want to keep cool so they don't have to sweat. Now, all of this has to do with a lot of things, but one thing to note is that there is more parasites that are in the meat of pork than there is of cows, and that also is linked to digestion. Okay, I said a lot. That's deep.
Yeah.
Somebody find what is the animals that pigs eat. Let's pick it up.
That should be a phone.
I'm gonna eat snakes.
Oh, wait, I'm gonna let him read it. What animals do pigs eat? And pigs are from the family of boars, right? You've heard of wild boars before? Warthogs and hogs. They're certain pigs. The one pigs that we know, the domesticated kind, are come from that lineage. Okay, go ahead.
Pigs are omnivores, which means that they consume both plants and animals. And while they are foraging animals, primarily eating leaves, roots, fruits, and flowers, in addition to some insects and fish.
So they eat insects and fish. Keep going.
Livestock pigs are fed mostly corn, soybeans.
So wait, so now pigs are not even fed the normal things that they eat in their environment. Cows are not even fed the normal things that they eat in their environment. Does that have any bearing on anything? Maybe we'll get to that in a moment. But also, pigs are opportunistic eaters, which means that they help to keep the ecology in check. Let's rewind that. So you said they eat insects and what else? And fish. Opportunistic, which means if there's an overgrowth of insects in an environment, the pigs will start to eat those insects to deplete the numbers, so then now things can get back into balance. Cattle, they don't do that. Cattle eats grass that you can eat one day and the next day springs right up, right? It comes right up. But if there's an overgrowth of insects, the cattle is not going to help you, but a pig will. So when you are living in this environment without your modern conveniences, every day you're analyzing every animal in your environment to see how they operate. You know, if I eat this, I'm not going to disturb the ecological ecosystem. But if I eat that, certain things will be disturbed. And if I eat this, I see we have better benefits of health. But if I eat that, we don't have the same benefits of health. Think about that.
Right.
Okay, keep going. Keep reading.
Right.
And another thing that's, because I want to also take input for what they're saying here, is that also with pigs, you have a lot of influx of toxins, because a lot of it can't be excreted like you can get from a cow or something else, right? So that's another danger that poses itself to you when you eat this meat. Keep going.
Nevertheless, these shall you not eat of, them that cheweth the cud, or of them that divided the hoof, as the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divided not the hoof.
Now, why would it be smart not to kill and eat camels if you live during this time period? Think about it. What was camels used for? Wait, say that loud. For what? Transportation. So it would only make sense that you would exclude the camel, because if you out here eating camels, we can't get from here to there.
Right.
It's a pack animal, so it would be it would be smart to prohibit consuming animals that you would use for duties to do other things. Now, cows are also important because they also supply milk as well, right? And also they also do other duties. Ox also do other duties in the field as well, for plowing and doing work like that. But the situation is that if you have to eat it, you can eat it because the way it digests this food, the way it gets rid of the toxins in the system, and the least amount of parasites make it a more delectable animal. And if there's an overgrowth of insects, we're not taking up the swine, but we know we kill this animal and leave this animal here, this animal will help to take care of it. So now we're staying in harmony and sync with the environment, right? So now the camel you don't want to kill because it's going to help you to get from A to B. Right. So we got to make sure somebody writing this, Most High, what about that camel there? Because if we got to eat that thing, I don't know how we going to get from here to there. He said, all right, leave that out. Keep going.
And the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divided not the hoof.
Now slow down. So if you took this template by eating the cud and splitting the hoof, out of Israel and in any other place of the world, that's the template you would use to determine if you can eat something or if you should leave it alone. Because chances are, if you can eat it, it's not going to be a detriment to the environment if you don't overconsume it. But it says that if it's something that you shouldn't eat, if I do interface with it and I kill it off, there's going to be some kind of degradation that's going to happen in the environment, and I'm going to throw the entire ecology off, because every animal has a specific diet, except for humans. We eat everything, every and anything you throw at us. Now, there was a TV show where this guy would go and eat all these exotic types of insects and bizarre foods, that's what it's called, and just eat any and everything. And they would just find anything to give to him, and he would just eat it. I've never seen anything like that, and no animal on this planet does that but humans.
Right.
We the only creatures that throw everything else in our environment out of whack by eating every and anything. Where's the balance? Where's the creator saying, listen, in order for me to provide and protect, you gotta listen. If you decide you don't want to listen and there's issues that happen in your community because of it, don't come to me for it. Don't thank me for something or ask me for help when I'm already giving you the manual on what to do. Okay, keep going.
And the hare, because he cheweth the cud, but divided not the hoof, he is unclean to you. And the swine, though he divided the hoof and be cloven-footed, yet cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you.
Mm-hmm. And what animal did you say that was?
The swine.
The swine. Okay, keep going.
And of their flesh shall ye not eat, and their carcass shall ye not touch. They are unclean to you.
Okay, keep going.
These shall ye eat of all that are in the water.
Okay. Now we're talking about the waters now, because remember, man was given dominion over what? What three things was he given dominion over?
Cattle?
No. What three? Somebody said air, water, and land, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're given governance over these three things. So there's animals that inhabits or visits these three areas, right? So we're dealing with the earth. So where did we go to next? The water now, right?
The water.
Okay, now we're jumping in the water. Go ahead.
These shall ye eat of all that are in the waters. Whatsoever has fins, scales, in the waters, in the seas, and in the rivers, them shall ye eat.
So anything with fins and scales, you are to eat. All right, keep going.
And all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, of all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination unto you.
Okay, so it's telling you that there should be an abomination. Now, what are some animals that are in the sea that don't have fins and scales? Okay. See, y'all just talking about stuff here in New Orleans. I'm just saying in general. Throw the whole pot out. You know what I'm saying? Now, look ahead. Yeah, right? So go ahead. What else? Shrimp, lobster, scallops, mussels, oysters, squid, octopus, crab, other shellfish. Matter of fact, I was watching something on the Discovery Channel where they was taking, how many of you heard about the Mariana Trench? You ever heard of Mariana Trench? I think I'm saying it right. It's a deep trench, one of the deepest trenches on Earth. And they submerged down there and found like a whole new level of animals that lived there. And none of them there had any scales or fins. They had little to no scales because they didn't need it in the environment that they lived in, where there was high nitrous gases and other stuff that was down there. So if you look at these animals that I've mentioned, what is one of the major roles in an ecological environment that a shrimp, lobster, oyster would have? Like, what would they be doing in the environment? Scavengers, cleaning the environment. So if you're eating all the animals that are designed to clean the environment, what's going to happen? That's like me shooting all the sanitation workers in the city. Not saying I would do it. I'm just saying hypothetically. And they all died. Who gonna pick up the garbage?
Right. I want to also point something out to y'all. Anybody ever went to Biloxi Beach, past Christian or anywhere? What color is the water? Brown, right? And every every 6 months, you know, they have a bad outbreak of some flesh-eating bacteria.
Yeah.
All right. Now, that's the Gulf of Mexico, right? All right. Now, you take that same body of water, go 50, 100 miles east, same body of water, go a little bit east of Pensacola, you know, or just parts of Pensacola. The water is blue. Right. It's pretty blue. See the bottom, beautiful. What do you notice in the Mississippi Gulf Coast that you won't ever see in Pensacola or Destin in the water? Now, I'm gonna give you a hint.
Fresh water.
Fresh water? No. Something else. It's man. I'm gonna give you. It's a boat. It's a type of boat.
Fishing boat.
There you go. There you go. The reason why the water is brown on the Gulf Coast, you're gonna see tons. They're pulling out the oysters. They're pulling out the shrimp. That's where all your oysters and shrimp coming from.
That's deep.
So you have the same body of water. Over here is brown. Over here is blue. You see nothing but yachts and stuff. Pensacola and Destin. You see no shrimp boats, no oyster boats, and that water is beautiful.
Wow.
So they're messing up the ecology.
Deep. And not just that, they're also dumping waste from the tools and the ships and stuff and the boats that you use that's circling in that water as well. So now you got a hodgepodge of a whole bunch of things that happen. But if you take all of the fish that are designed to clean the ocean, that is your end result. So how are we taking care of the environment by depleting it of the resources that it needs to sustain and clean itself? Think about that. All right, keep going.
These shall be an abomination unto you. Ye shall not eat of their flesh, but ye shall have their carcasses in abomination. Whatsoever has no fins, no scales in the waters, they shall be an abomination unto you.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Paul changed all that, right? Didn't Paul change all that?
Man.
Well, he didn't give the power to Christ to change it, but he gave it to Paul to change it.
All right, keep going.
All right,
You all right? So what verse you at?
I'm at verse 13.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. And these are they which ye shall have in abomination among the fowls. They shall not be eaten.
Now, the key word is the fowls, right? Now, this is what I'm going to hone into a little bit more because this is an extremely comprehensive, extensive discussion that I cannot have right here for lack of time. But we can go into much further into the, it says the beasts of the field and then of the fish of the sea. But now let's stick with the fowls of the air. Now, remember how he did it. He went from the earth to the water to the sky. And creation, the Most High did what first? What did he populate first? So in creation, he is splitting, dividing, splitting, dividing, splitting, dividing. And once the split happens, the divide happens, now the population happens. Let me say it again. When you go to Genesis chapter 1, he's splitting, dividing, populating. Splitting, dividing, or separating, populating. Splitting, separating, populating. So if you think about Genesis chapter 1, what did he split and divide and separate first? You can go, it's an open book test. You can go right to Genesis chapter 1 and you can look up the answers. What you say? The heavens and earth. So the heavens and the earth. Yes, but a little bit more detail. What you say? You can just read it. No. Yes, light from dark, but with the waters from the waters, right? Keep going. Read it. Read the verse. Y'all got it? Oh, they probably starting from verse 1.
Oh, okay.
All right, so go ahead. Whenever y'all get it, just somebody say I got it and just read it.
God said that there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and then it divided.
There you go. Say that again.
God said that there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and then it divided the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, divided the waters under the firmament from the waters. The world is above the firmament in the sun. God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning was the sixth day. God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering. So now he did what? So the first thing he did was the sky, the firmament. The second thing he did was the earth, you said, right? And what else? Keep going.
the seed, God saw that it was good. God said that the earth ready for grass, the earth yielding seed, tree, yielding fruit after this kind, the seed is in itself.
So now, slow down. So remember I told you that word bara is a bad translation because we say it means create. It doesn't mean create. It means to divide, to cut, to separate, or to form or to fashion something that's been cut. So if I want somebody who's a seamstress, any seamstress designers here? All right. So the first thing you do is you go buy fabric, right? Okay, because my Isha, she does the same thing. So you go buy fabric. When you get the piece of fabric, the material's already there. The dress is already there. But what do you have to do to it? You have to cut it, shape it, fashion it, and then maybe add ornaments to it or other things to it. This is what was going on. The material was already there. When it says he created the heavens and the earth, no. He is forming, shaping, and fashioning the heavens and the earth. Because when you go to verse 2, it says the earth was without form and void.
Right.
It had no shape because he didn't go and do a seamstress work onto it yet. So the material is there. He has to cut, divide, separate, fill. Cut, divide, separate, fill. So as you see, he's separating the heavens from the waters, and then separating the earth from the waters. Now you have water here, you have earth here, now you have the sky here. Now you have to populate everything. Put the fowls of the air up here, put the beasts of the field up here, put the fish and all the whales and everything out there in the ocean. That's what's occurring in Genesis chapter 1. So when you get to the word berith, we see that something's being cut in half, divided asunder, so some kind of action can take place. And in order for him to put and populate the earth, he had to cut, separate, and then populate. So now he's revisiting this, going back to both the earth, going to the sea, and now going to the sky, telling you what's been populating these regions and what we should avoid so the ecology or the ecosystem can continue to sustain itself, and what we can eat if we choose to know that we won't disturb the environment if we eat these things reasonably and responsibly. So keep going.
And these are they which ye shall have an abomination among the fowls.
Now you're talking about the fowls, right? The birds. All right, keep going.
They shall not be eaten. They are an abomination.
Now, after you read this, I want to see if anybody can tell me what type of birds are these. So go ahead, let's read it.
Okay. The eagle.
Uh-huh.
And the ossifrage.
Uh-huh.
And the osprey.
Uh-huh.
And the vulture.
Mm-hmm.
And the kite.
Uh-huh.
And after his kind, every raven after his kind.
Uh-huh.
And the owl.
Uh-huh.
And the nighthawk.
Uh-huh.
And a cuckoo.
Uh-huh.
And the hawk
Uh-huh.
after his kind. And the little owl.
Mm-hmm.
And the cormorant. And the great owl.
Uh-huh.
And the swan. And the pelican.
Uh-huh.
And the gear eagle.
Now the swine, the pelican, and the what?
Gear eagle.
That's a separate category. But let's deal with the first things. Reading here, it says eagle, bearded vulture, black vulture, kite, falcon, raven, ostrich, nighthawk, seagull, hawk of any kind, little owl, cormorant, and the short-eared owl, the barn owl, the tawny owl, and the carrion vulture. Now, I'm going to show you two things here. First, what kind of birds are most of these? Say that again. Who said that? Somebody is an ornithologist in here? You said a bird of prey, right? Okay, so the birds of prey, what do they do?
Mice eat the vermin.
You said what?
Vermin.
Ah, damn, you're just taking the whole message, man. But now that's what's up. They eat the what? The vermin. And the vermin, what's their role? What do they eat? The pests and what else? Other things that they can get there. Have you ever seen a rat's diet before? And y'all live in New Orleans. There's rats out here, right? And rats in New York, where I used to live at, they eat anything. They'll just eat whatever. But what happens when there's an influx of rats and mice? You have all types of diseases.
Right.
So if you're eating off all the birds of prey, how do you expect to keep these things in check?
Right.
Did you know that this environment had more birds of prey than there is right now? And you wonder why. You think the pest problem is because we eating garbage, having this in the street. No, there's no birds in the sky that's eating the vermin.
Last time you seen a bald eagle just flying around.
When's the last time you seen a bald eagle?
Yeah.
So one thing now that pest control is doing to control in certain environments, the pests, they're now breeding more birds of prey as a natural means of buffering against the influx of vermin or pests or rats, because now there's a situation where we've made it opportunistic where there's no predators for them. So they're going to thrive.
Right.
So imagine if during this time period, they was eating all the birds of prey. Now what's going to keep these mice that they know during this time can bring pestilence in check?
Right.
How do you think the Black Plague spread in Europe? Through mice.
Right.
Through pestilence.
Right.
Right, from the mice. Now, if they had all the birds in check there, the bird's job will be able to keep these things buffered so they don't overflow, and now you won't have these opportunistic diseases that's killing people off. So this is very practical why you don't want to kill and eat one of these birds. And it doesn't just mean eat, because one of the acts of having to consume it is to catch it and slaughter it first before you've been eating. So the implication is not just eating, but also slaughtering it and capturing it, because now you're hindering it from playing its role in the ecosystem of the environment which you live. Are you following?
Yeah.
This is very practical.
Right.
It's not just like, all right, so God said don't do this and don't do that. Wait a second, let's step back.
Right.
What role do they play in the environment that the deity would tell the people, leave it alone, don't eat it? That's exactly what a bird. Thank you for saying that. So the bird of prey, it relates to a particular type of species, right? And it's related to the talents and the means in which it hunts its prey, right? So y'all know, are there owls out here? I don't know if there's owls out here. Yeah, owls out here,
Yeah.
right? Owls hunt during the day or the night. Which one do they hunt? Day or night? They hunt at night, because now you still have vermin that operate during the night. So you have some that operate during the day, some that operate during the night. So therefore, the creative makes sense to make some of these birds of prey during the day and some during the night. But if we kill the ones at night, now during the day, if we keep those birds there, we're giving an opportunity for those same vermin to multiply overnight without no predators attacking them. So they'll just opportunistically wait and probably go and scavenge at night instead of during the day. But Yah has created buffers to ensure that they stay in alignment and stay in check. And mice and rat multiply fast,
Right.
extremely fast.
Right.
So if you don't keep them in check, they're going to expand and whatever they get their mouth on, they're going to eat, right?
Right.
So that's what we understand with birds of prey. You can go and research on it. I had a document I want to read. I don't have to. Just research what birds of prey is, and this is why they're not allowed to eat it, because if they eat it, they're going to throw off the ecology of the environment. Now they also add the bat here. Now, do y'all know what bats eat? Somebody pull up the diet. They eat insects. Insects, right?
Insects.
Okay, what else? They don't just eat insects. Anybody can bring up the diet of a regular horned bat, right? And then you have some vampire bats that's out there too. And those vampire bats, they actually sip blood, right? They bite cattle, they sip the blood, and they fly off, right? That's this whole, that too. They carry rabies. Oh, there you go. All right, keep going. Somebody read. Tell me what the diet of a bat is.
Insects, nectar, pollen, fruit.
Wait. Insects, nectar, pollen. So you telling me they're also responsible for helping for pollination? We also told to leave insects alone. Well, bees are responsible for also pollinating flowers, right?
Yep.
And creating what? Honey. And not just honey, propolis or royal jelly, which is probably one of the most nutrient-dense jellies that you can get on the planet, right? It's a superfood, right? So these animals also help to contribute to providing sustenance to other things that live in the environment, hence why you need to leave them alone. Don't bother them, because if you kill and eat off all the insects, then your birds and your pigs, and so they have nothing else to eat. Then they're forced to change diet. And we see that in environmental urbanization, where we start building buildings and streets and the home of other animals where they're normal environments, like bears, right? Bears forage for food sometimes. And we make a whole city in their environment. Now they got to find something else to eat because their normal foods are not there. Right. Now we have attacks where they now attack us, break into our homes, go into our garbage, because we have overridden all the natural resources that they need to eat in the environment. Right. You was gonna say something? It looked like you found something deep. Now, let me show you something about another thing. So a lot of these words for these animals are called adjectival nouns. What is an adjectival noun? Anybody? Though it's a grammar word. What is an adjectival noun? I'm gonna bring up the carrion vulture that they mentioned here. An adjectival noun is when you take an adjective and make it into a noun, right? So if I say, let's say, I don't know, some animal is fast. Name me a fast animal. Ostriches are fast. Ostriches can run really fast,
40
right?
miles an hour.
40 miles an hour. And what else? Leopards can run extremely fast as well. And jaguars, I think, if I'm not mistaken, can run fast. No, it's leopards. Leopards, specifically leopards.
Yeah.
And let's say, for example, I say, man, that leopard is fast. And now what I do is take that attribute for fast and turn it into a noun. So when I say that word fast, within the colloquial speech of a community, they know, oh, he's talking about the leopard. So you're taking an adjective, turn it into a noun, and now calling a creature or an item or a thing that adjective and turning it into a noun. Well, a lot of these things that were descriptive of these birds are not even names of the birds at all. If you go to lexicon, sometimes they'll tell you it's an unknown animal. We're assuming it's this, but because they know what the birds of prey are, now when you go into Israel and you list out the birds of prey, now you can use these attributes and attribute it to various birds of prey in your environment. So if you was to take this template and bring it here to New Orleans, you didn't have to ask anybody, okay, I don't know what to eat, what not to eat. Observe the wildlife and see what are your birds of prey and which ones aren't. Then you'll know what you can eat and what you will eat that won't deplete the environment and what you should stay away from. So the carrion vulture is very interesting. So I'm gonna pull up this document real quick, and it explains something that's very unique about this creature. It says, Bakker represents the vulture as very tender and affectionate to its young. He says, we know that Horus Apollo, that the she-vulture was sacred to Isis and adorned the statue of the goddess. That was the emblem of paternal affection, and that was the hieroglyphic for an affectionate mother. He further says the female vulture, having hatched her young ones, continues with the 120 days, providing them with all necessities. And when the stock of food fails them, she tears off the fleshy part of her thigh and feeds them with that and the blood which flows from the womb. This is similar to what was attributed by the ancients to the pelican, namely that its great extremities, it pierces its own breast to feed its offspring with blood. Now, you're going to say, what is you talking about? When they're looking at this environment and they're seeing that there are some species of birds that rely upon their mothers at least 120 days for its survival before it can be mature, you leave those animals alone. How do you know what animals they are? The ones that are affectionate towards its young for 60, 90, 120 plus days. You stay away from them, because if you eat the mothers, the children cannot survive, or the offspring will not survive, and therefore you eradicate the entire species.
What kind of vulture was that again?
That's called the carrion vulture, the osprey, the osprey, and the pelican. And this is why you see the pelican name there, because now they're looking for attributes. So if you out here in New Orleans and you wanted to know, should we eat this bird or not, and you see by observing this bird that it stays with its young man almost 4 months, leave that thing alone, because if we eat that thing, then the young will not survive, and therefore that animal won't be here at all for you to eat anyway.
Right.
Do you see how practical that is? That's deep.
Right.
It's not like, oh, don't do that because I say don't do that. But no, let me explain to you, because if you do that, look how you throw everything else off. Are you following? Okay. So when we get into that word, Leviticus chapter 11, verse 18, that they use for osprey, carrion vulture, etc., and we look up to see what word is that we're dealing with there. Let me pull it up here in Hebrew, right? We have the word ha-raham, right? Or the. Ha is the prefix for the definite article, the. But raham is the word there, and that means carrion vulture. It says its origin is from an older, unused word, but it says here that it can refer to a kind of vulture that is tender towards its young, a gear, or even an eagle, it says here. It says it can either be a pelican or it can also extend to a type of vulture. So just by looking at these animals to see their behavior, you know whether or not it will be detrimental to the environment, whether you should eat it or not. It's extremely practical. It's not religious at all. It's just looking at how the culture examined the environment and determined, well, we should leave this alone, or you know what, we can eat that and be within the safe zone of not depleting the environment of what it needs in order for it to sustain itself. I don't see why people make this stuff so religious. It's extremely simple, Right? Keep
Basic
reading.
science.
Basic science. Keep reading.
And a stork, and a heron, and after her kind,
Mm-hmm.
and a lobwing, the lapwing,
Mm-hmm.
and the bat,
Okay.
and all the fowls that creep, going upon all four, shall be an abomination unto you. Yet these may ye eat of, every flying, creeping thing that goeth upon all four.
Now listen to this now, right? Because first it's like leave the creeping things alone, but there are some exceptions, and there's a reason why there's exceptions. So go ahead.
The creeping thing that goes upon all fours, which have legs above their feet to leap withal upon the earth.
Now give me, what example would that be? Grasshoppers and a locust. Now, how many of y'all seen these outbreaks of these swarms of locusts? Raise your hand. Now, wouldn't that, now during these times, that was common. So now you would see why the people will be allotted to eat. And these animals have a lot of protein as well. To eat these animals, because if you don't eat these animals, they're going to multiply and they're going to swarm and eat all your crops.
Right.
So it's ideal to add in the diet to eat these insects that have a lot of protein, because if you don't keep them in check, they're going to eat up all your crops. Very simple. It's not deep. Now, today, most of us probably won't be eating no locusts in our environment today. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't even think I ever had a locust before in my life. And I don't think I would even eat one or a grasshopper. But during this period of time, this was a staple in their environment, because looking at the divine ecological model is to eat these things to keep them in check so they don't destroy your crops, because they are a detriment to your crops. It's very practical. It's not deep, really. It's just looking at the environment and say, hey, we need to start eating these locusts because they're starting to really reproduce and kill off everything that we're trying to grow. Very simple. You can read the rest of it.
And even these of them ye may eat, the locust after its kind, and the bald locust after its kind, and the beetle after its kind, and the grasshopper.
So the beetle and the grasshopper. Okay, keep going.
But all other flying, creeping things which have 4 feet shall be an abomination unto you.
Leave it alone. Because now you got to look at the benefits and the detriments. If it's an asset or liability when looking at your environment empirically. And this is what they did every day. All they did was look at all of these things. They're not like us. Most of us don't even know the animals in the environment. But if we was to transplant you back then, they would tell you the behavior of every animal and insect and fish or whatever. Because this is all they would encounter each and every day. They were so in tune with the environment, they knew what was off limits and what wasn't. All right. Now, what verse are you at?
At 24.
Okay. So what's after that?
And for these ye shall be unclean. Whatsoever toucheth the carcass of them shall be unclean until eat.
So leave the dead bodies alone. Why? Because there's animals that will eat those dead bodies. Don't touch it. Leave it alone, because that's food for vultures that are scavengers that come in to eat afterwards, for insects, because insects are responsible. Maggots, they lay eggs in there, and the maggots, they decompose and break down and eat up the carcass, right? And then you'll have animals, wild animals that come down and grab the bones. Like during this time, they had wild dogs that will come and grab the bones and munch on the bones and eat the bones. That's why sometimes the wild dogs were considered unclean, because they ate the carcasses. But the domesticated dogs did not eat carcasses. They ate whatever the master would give to them. You know what I'm saying? So anything that has a carcass, don't touch it. Leave it alone. You'll be unclean, because there's a whole bunch of disease if you interface with these things. So they were told, leave the dead bodies alone, because if you touch it, you get a disease and die. They probably saw a situation where people kept trying to move dead bodies and carcasses or whatever, and people started dying. Like, hold on, something's going on. Just leave them alone. Let the environment take care of itself. But if you overconsume the things in the environment, then this is one of the things you're going to have to worry about. All right. So, yeah.
Just real quick, do we find anything this descriptive in Kemet of dietary laws to this degree?
To this extent, not like this. We find that they do describe. We have a litany of literature that talk about a lot of things that occur in Kemet as far as animals. Even if you look at the hieroglyphics, or what's called the Medunetia, there's a whole category on insects and animals. So I'm sure that they've observed it and they were aware. But from a dietary perspective, we don't have anything that's lined up like this. we don't have anything that's lined up just like how we've been here now.
Code, like stewardship.
Correct. We don't see nothing that deep there that I'm aware of. Now, it could exist, and I've read a lot of literature in ancient Egypt, but nothing that is this precise with this type of impact on the environment. You know what I'm saying? But again, what he was saying was the other peoples outside of you are doing these abominations. If you go and look at the ancient Philistines, they ate pigs, they ate wild dogs, they ate the stuff that they got from the ocean. They didn't care. They ate anything. You know what I'm saying? And now they're the Israelites, and they're on the coastal plains of Israel. The Israelites are more in the Central Hill countryside. And now you have this group that's here and this other group that's emerging here. And when you go into these, I'm gonna show you how profound this is. When you go into the archaeology of Iron Age 1 and Iron Age 2 Israel and go into the strata. So the strata are the different layers of sediment that preserve fossils and other things. And we uncover and unearth the Iron Age 1 and 2 period in Canaan or Palestine or Israel. You'll see that in Iron Age 1 to Iron Age 2, not 2B, there's no pig bones and no other unclean animals that are in any of those known Israelite sites. People will tell you that the Bible was written later, but yet we see that what this is talking about is actually what happened physically that's preserved in the fossil record. There you go. It's there. That is incredible for anybody to tell you that all this was fiction, man wrote it, whatever. Okay, you can say that, but obviously whoever wrote it had knowledge of what they were doing back during Iron Age time. Okay, so we're gonna move forward. So what else is in there?
Okay. And for these shall be unclean to you, and whosoever touches them, the carpet shall be unclean to eat.
Somebody says, please tell me the purpose of mosquitoes. We went over that, right? So look up predators of mosquitoes. Just type predators of mosquitoes in. So I'm gonna let somebody look that up. They was like, listen, we live out here in New Orleans. Please tell me why I should respect mosquitoes. You know what I'm saying? Right? So somebody look up predators of mosquitoes, natural predators of mosquitoes. Go ahead. Dragonflies, bats, keep going. Birds.
Western mosquito fish.
Mosquito fish, go ahead. It could keep going. So mosquitoes feed all these animals. And if you kill off the mosquitoes, you're not gonna have none of these animals. And then the animals you eat need to eat these animals, and even some of these animals are responsible for cultivating the soil so that plants can grow, right? So certain manures or waste that come from certain animals and insects are responsible for fertilizing the soil. So if you kill off the mosquitoes and then they die, now you're not having the proper decomposition of the soil. No. Now, look. I'm not advocating that you can't kill mosquitoes because there's an overgrowth of them, so you're allowed to do that. All I was saying was that they're responsible for a particular role in the environment, right? And also, and this is something that was displayed before, is that sometimes mosquitoes are necessary for vector. Vectors is like a virus for their survival. Now, I know nobody's happy about viruses being around, but virus is part of the ecology. And in order for certain viruses to spread, it needs mosquitoes. That's just part of the environment. Now, that's not a good thing that a lot of us want to know. I ain't trying to get no West Nile virus, something crazy like that. But the environment's set up so that every living thing can have a chance at survival. That doesn't mean it will, but the dietary law was designed to stay within that particular order in that environment. And as a template, we could take that and apply it to our environment to know which animals are to stay away from, to continue on with the ecology, and which ones we can actually consume. And it goes in example to other things as well. Even some plants that I don't see nobody's going to eat poison ivy. And that's something that we can add as our halakha, or our extension of the dietary law, because we've encountered poison ivy. We know that it has a detrimental effect on our health. So leave that plant alone. So if I see it, I identify it, I teach that instruction or taught to my child. Hey, listen, certain plants you want to stay away from, and even certain fruits you don't want to eat because certain berries are poisonous. Because our bodies are not designed to synthesize the toxins that are in those berries that certain other animals can eat. So we would extend this template to even plants or even some other animals that will not be beneficial to our diet. And then what you do over time with somebody that's sick or not feeling healthy with a particular diet, you do what's called an elimination diet, where you start cutting out certain items in your environment until you find the agent responsible for afflicting you. And that's something that they also did during this time. So that elimination diet could have also been something that they've done during then to encapsulate why they came up with this final template on a dietary law. Okay, so what else we got there?
Verse 25. Whosoever beareth aught of the carcass of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening.
Okay, so we're gonna skip past that. So what verse are you on?
We're on 26.
Okay. What else is there? Keep reading.
All right. The carcass of every beast which divideth the hoof and is not cloven footed, nor cheweth the cud, are unclean unto you.
There you go. Leave them alone.
Everyone that touches them shall be unclean.
Okay, keep going.
And whatsoever goeth upon his paws among all manner of beasts.
Paws. What animals have paws?
Dogs, cats.
Dogs, cats. Okay, keep going.
Beasts that go on all fours, those are unclean unto you. Whosoever touches their carcass shall be unclean until the evening.
Okay, so they're unclean to you, and whoever touches the carcass, don't eat them, leave their carcass alone. But it said nothing about domestication.
Right.
And that's the reason, because they domesticated dogs. And we have references to that from both the Old and New Testament. You want to say, okay, go ahead.
Okay. And he that beareth the carcass of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening.
And what verse are you at?
28.
Okay.
All right. Now 29. These also shall be unclean unto you among the creeping things that creep upon the earth.
And I'll go into this. So it goes into the mole rat, the mouse, right? Remember we talking about the mouse? That's not our food. That's the birds of prey food. Why are you eating their food? Don't eat their food. The great lizard of any kind, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the sand lizard, the chameleon. Now, again, remember I told you, go back and see what these words mean in Hebrew, and what you'll get is an adjective that you can then extract and apply it empirically in your environment with different animals that meet the same attribute. And that will tell you what you can and can't eat. It says, these are unclean, all that swarm. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean. Any which you that falls when they are dead will be unclean, whether it's an article of wood or garment, or skin, or sack. Any article that's used for any purpose must be put into water, and it shall be clean unto the evening. Why? Because during that time, that was their form of purification. They wasn't using what's that we use today? Sanitation. What's that called?
Sanitizer.
Hand sanitizers.
Right.
They didn't have that back then. Because if they did, you could just do a little hand sanitizer, rub your hands, kill off 99.9% of the bacteria, or use bleach, right? In their time, they believed that running water, not still water, that's what's called living water. Running water was helpful in removing a lot of that waste and potential vectors of disease and so forth. So that's why they said if you touch something that's unclean, wash it thoroughly before you want to use the item again. All right. Any food in it that could be eaten or water that comes from it shall be unclean. All that drink that could be drunk from such a vessel is unclean. Nevertheless, a spring or cistern. So when you look at the environment of ancient Israel, you'll see that were cisterns or springs. Now, one of the things that people don't realize is that when you look up that word wilderness, matter of fact, let's get that. Somebody look up the word wilderness in Hebrew. We think wilderness means a barren place, that nothing grows. There's no way in the world outside of manna that the Israelites could be sustained in a barren place where nothing grows. That is false. One thing that you can ask a Bedouin that navigates the Saharan desert, how do you get from point A to point Z without dying? They'll tell you that we have routes to oases and springs and cisterns that provide you running warm water that you can consume. And the oases have areas that you can graze livestock and even eat vegetation from. So anybody got the word for wilderness? And read, what does midbar mean? Watch this.
Wilderness, pasture.
Wait, say that second one again.
Pasture?
Pasture. Now, where animals can you have grazed in a area that is void of life? You can't graze no animals there. The wilderness was a region that had pasture where flocks. How do you think the Israelites were able to feed their flocks as they was going from point A to point B to point C? Because there were pastures and oases and springs in the interim. This is why learning the topography of an environment is important, because now when you go back and read the text, you're putting yourself into the shoes of the people that live in that culture. So now when you're reading the text today, you see the importance of certain words. Yes.
So it seems like when the Israelites were in Egypt, it was more of an urban environment.
Correct.
So they go from an urban environment to me, so it was almost like they were going into this new area where they didn't know how to do.
There you go.
So
or how to survive.
Had food, they just didn't know.
Facts. And they've been separated for almost 400 years from that environment. So they had to relearn things. And not even that, when in Exodus chapter 20, when they came back and met up with Jethro had to tell Moses, listen, you're not running this operation correctly. Let me show you how to do this, son. And he schooled them. But before they left, his brother-in-law, who was a Midianite, left with Moses. And Moses said, please come with us because you have eyes to see things that we can't see. Why you bring in a Midianite priest with you when you got the Levites? Because there are things that he knows about the environment that they were not schooled on yet. So they needed somebody to help them to see these things and understand these things. And Yah was testing them first to see if they can keep these things before they entered into the land, because that's like the mother giving a child instructions or how to, do what they're doing in the household in which the dad is the head of the household. So the child knows how to operate and stay within order, okay? Then it goes, any animal you may eat that dies, whoever touches carcass will be unclean. Every swarming thing that swarms on the ground is detestable, don't eat it. And it says, this is the law about beast and bird and every living creature that moves throughout the waters and every creature that swarms on the ground, to make a distinction between the clean and unclean, or unclean and clean, and between the living creature that may be eaten and a living creature that may not be eaten. So it's religion that turns this into taboo, but it's culture that liberates you to be in sync and in tune with the natural environment. Very simple. It is not nothing religious. It's not nothing deep. It's not nothing scary. It's not nothing spooky. It's simply looking at the environment and using divine wisdom to discern what should be eaten, what shouldn't be eaten, based on empirical observation, and knowing that if I take this out of the environment or overconsume this or disturb that, the entire environment is out of whack. All right. So now we're going to get close to wrapping up. The second part of this is Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8. So now we dealt with the animals. What other items that they ate that was in the environment that will connect you back to reading Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, I believe, or 29, which relates to the seed-bearing plant and the trees with fruits that bear seed. Deuteronomy 8:8 says what?
A land of wheat and barley.
So now they're going into a land that has what? Wheat and barley, which was important because the barley was a spring seasonal crop to help them to identify what season or time of the year they were in, right? The barley harvest. That's why when the plagues occurred in Egypt and Exodus chapter 10, and the hail hit, the hail destroyed what crops? The barley, because the barley was what? Getting brittle and dry because it was ready to be harvested. But the wheat and the flax, I believe, was not damaged because they were not ripe yet. So this is interesting because it starts to give you information on what season they were leaving out of Egypt. During barley season. So when you look in Israel to see when barley is growing, you get an idea of when we get to Genesis, Exodus chapter 12 and 13, which says this is the first month of months for you. You know what time of the year it is by observing the natural phenomenon that is the crops of cereals that they consume during that time, right? So keep going.
And of wheat, of barley, and vines.
And vines. And what do you grow in vines?
And fig trees.
What do you grow in vines?
Oh,
grapes, right? Fig trees. Somebody said figs is out here too, right? There's different species of figs. Keep going.
And pomegranates.
And pomegranates. All right.
A land of olive and honey.
Olives and honey. Now, in this sense, they equated that to honey dates. How many have ever had a honey date before?
Oh, good.
Very good, sweet, succulent, right? Yeah. Honey date. So now what we're doing is we're building out a dietary model. We're showing you what animals that they were allowed to eat it if they wanted to eat as a dietary means. And now I'm bringing you in this land that's going to produce these items for you as well that you want to introduce to your diet, right? So the other things that they were also including in a diet would be Genesis 43 and 11. And this is when they were in the land before they ventured into Egypt. Some other items. Genesis 43 and 11 says what?
Says 43 and 11 and says, and their father Israel said unto them, if it must be so now, do this.
What?
Take the best fruits in the land. Okay,
which we named some of the fruits. Keep going.
All right. In your vessels, and carry down the man a present, a little balm and a little honey.
Balm, honey. Keep going.
Spices, and myrrh, and nuts, and almonds.
Now these are additional items that they ate. Now we're building a diet. Are you feeling me? There's a reason why these items were naturally selected for their benefits. Now, I'm not going to get into all of that because, again, we'll be here forever if I did that. Sorry. If I did that. But I want you to see that a diet is being built because now we got to try to figure out what does any of this mean right now. Last one, Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 9.
Okay, 4 verse 9.
Okay, what is that?
All right. It says, take thou also unto thee wheat and barley,
which we covered, and what else?
And beans,
and lentils, and millet. Now, let's slow down. So Esau, right? What was he asking to eat from his brother? Lentil soup. He gave a birthright for a lentil soup. That's like you having a whole estate of French quarters. You own all of that, and you just get real hungry one day, and you know a mom and pop shop, they about to run out of their special porridge. You're like, listen, I'll give you the entire, you hungry, so you're not even thinking. The entire French quarters, if you just give me that. Okay. There you go.
No problem.
No problem. All right, so go ahead.
No problem.
So beans, lentils, what else?
Beans, lentils. Beans, lentils, and millet.
Millet. What else?
And finches.
Finches. Go ahead.
And put them in one vessel, and make the bread thereof according to the number of days that thou shalt lie upon thy side.
So now this was another staple that was in their environment that they also ate and consumed, right? Nothing processed here, right? Nothing that was GMO based here, right? Cane. Okay. But just natural items in the environment that they utilize for a diet. Okay. So I'm going to read this real quick, and then we're going to get into what does any of this matter. Okay. So I'm going to read this just to give you an idea of the ecological and topographical environment. When most people think of ancient Israel, they think of a hot, dry desert where people lived in tents. However, ancient Israel had a much more temperate environment and evolved in a settled nation over time. Ancient Israel was located what scholars refer to as the ancient Near East, an area around what today is called the Middle East. Among the various nations or city-states in the area, Israel evolved into a nation with a monarchy around the 11th century CE. Before this, the Israelites, who were descendants of Jacob according to the Tanakh, inhabited Israel. They were a nomadic people and a semi-nomadic people who lived in tents and impermanent dwellings and traveled from place to place. Now, another good way to learn about a culture of people is to look at the lexicon of the language, because the words that they use are going to be based upon the environment in which they were raised. There's words that I heard used out here in New Orleans I've never heard before in Atlanta, and I have no clue what the heck that means. But if I was from New Orleans, I would know. I'm from New York. There's words that were used there in New York that if you wasn't from New York, you wouldn't know what they talking about. You know what I'm saying? But these are things that are important because in the language, it will teach you about the culture. That is how you learn about the culture, by getting into the language. This is why I encourage people to get into the original biblical languages of Hebrew, Aramaic, Syriac, even the Koine Greek, because it gives you more depth behind what you're reading in a translation. And a lot of the manuscripts that was used for these translations, we still have today. And when you learn the language, you can start translating for yourself. It says the climate of ancient Israel was not just dry. The temperatures ranged from 40 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and there was a rainy and a dry season. Israel was located in the Fertile Crescent, an area that had fertile soil because of the rivers going through it. This fertility allowed Israelites to produce several crops and trade with them with neighboring nations. Israel is called the land of milk and honey, and it goes on to that, which I shared with y'all. And it says also the honey wouldn't have only been the honey that we know from honeybees, but it would also be like a syrup that's derived from dates and grapes. In addition to livestock and fruit, they also produce grains like barley and wheat. These resources figure largely in the stories of the Tanakh of shepherds, people gleaning wheat in the fields, the significance of bread and wine for Passover celebrations and feasts and festivals. When trading these resources, Israelites would typically travel two major roads that ran north and south and passed through Israel: the King's Highway, which ran from Damascus to the Gulf of Aqaba and middle to Lower Egypt, and the way of the land of the Philistines, which ran from Damascus to Upper Egypt along the Mediterranean Sea. Now, the way of the land of the Philistines is also known as the way of Heru from ancient Kemet, and that was a route that came from, the northern part of the Nile Delta and ran all the way north to almost Syria. And what was interesting is we'll read in the text where the scriptures say, the Most High told the children of Israel, do not go by the way of the Philistines. So if they didn't go that route, they went another route. And the scripture said because if they went that route, they would be afraid or whatever. But the practical reason why they didn't go that route was because that was the route that the Pharaoh would take in order to pass through and go through Palestine or Canaan at that time. So to avoid encountering future pharaohs, they would have to go the Transjordan route, which would be northwest Arabia, make their way north into Jordan, and then cross over the river into Israel. And that was the route that they took. And those 40 years was there, said, to test them, to make sure that they can obey before they were able to be brought into the land where they could be protected and provided for. All right. So now the question is, what does any of this information have to do with anything? Why are you telling me this right now? I'm right here. It's 2019. You talking about stuff from 1000 BCE, 2000 BCE. Divine, this has nothing to do with me today. I beg to differ. Let's do this. Some of y'all are familiar with this text. I'm going to use it for reference because y'all are familiar with it. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 21. I'm not here to make any definitive conclusions or anything. I'm just shedding some light on something. Let's get Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 21.
28, verse 21. Okay. 28, verse 21. The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee until he have consumed thee from off the land, whether thou goest to possess it. Okay, so slow down. So he's going to do, you said what? A pestilence? A pestilence.
And this is going to be on the land that what? What does it say?
On the land, whether thou goest to possess it.
Okay, and what verse was that I gave you?
Deuteronomy 28, verse 21.
Okay, so I'm going to read this here as well. It says, Yah will make the pestilence stick to you until you're consumed off the land that you are entering to take possession of it. Then it goes on to give an example. One is the wasting disease with fever, inflammation, fiery heat, and with drought, and with blight, and with mildew. They shall pursue you until you perish. That's very interesting, looking at the word pestilence there. So when we go into this word pestilence, let's see what this word pestilence is. We're going to see something a little bit in a couple of verses that go on a little later. So it says here that this word plague there is the word debir, or pestilence, or plague. So it's not just a pestilence. It can be something that's plaguing you in regards to your health. It's very interesting. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, and let's jump to verse 58 to 61. Read that.
All right. 58 to 61. Deuteronomy 28, verse 58. If thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book.
So what is it saying? If you don't observe to do what?
To do all the words of this law that are written in this book.
Keep going.
thou mayest hear this glorious and fearful name, the Lord thy God. Then the Lord will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sickness, and of long countenance. Keep going.
Keep going. What verse you at now?
I'm on verse 6.
Okay.
Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt.
So he's going to bring all the diseases on you. Keep going.
Right, which thou wast afraid of.
And what verse is this?
60.
Okay, keep going to 61.
And they shall cleave unto thee.
Okay.
61. Also, every sickness and every plague which is not written in this book of the law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed.
Now slow down. So now, some of us in here identify as Israelites. Some of us may not. Either way, there's something that's very crucial that we can still learn from what we're reading today. What is the number one disease that is responsible for killing African Americans in this country? Say that loud. CVD, which is cardiovascular disease. Wait. So we read all this information about the diet, right? With things that we eat in and certain foods. So now when we read in here and you're saying that the number one disease that's responsible for killing the most African Americans is heart disease?
Heart disease.
So are you telling me that you just gave us a solution to avoid heart disease? Maybe. Let's go to science. Let's see what science says. Some people say, oh, you bugging, I don't know what you're talking about. Here's an article from the AHA scientific statement, right? From the clinical statements and guidelines, talking about the cardiovascular health in African Americans, right? This is a statement from the American Heart Association. That's what AHA stands for. Endorsed by the American College of Cardiology. It says population-wide reductions in cardiovascular disease incidence and mortality have not been shared equally by African Americans. The burden of cardiovascular disease in the African American community remains high and is a primary cause of disparities in life expectancy between African Americans and whites. The objectives of the present scientific statement are to describe cardiovascular health in African Americans and to highlight unique considerations for disease prevention and management. Okay? So it says the results was the higher prevalence of traditional cardiovascular risk, which is hypertension, disease mellitus, obesity, atherosclerotic cardiovascular risk underlies the relatively earlier age of onset of cardiovascular diseases amongst African Americans. Hypertension is in particular is highly prevalent amongst African Americans and contributes directly to the notable disparities in stroke, heart failure, and peripheral artery disease amongst African Americans. Despite the availability of effective pharmacotherapies and indications of some tailored pharmacotherapies, and pharmacotherapeutics are a branch of medicine where you customize medicine for a particular genetic makeup of a particular group of people, which means it will only work effectively with this group and not with this group based on your genes. That's deep, right? Because diseases can be curtailed and customized the same way. I'm gonna stay away from that. I'll let y'all do some research. It's deep. It says disease management is less effective among African Americans, yielding a higher mortality. Explanations for these persistent disparities in cardiovascular disease are multifactorial and span from the individual level to the social environment. Conclusion: the strategies needed to promote equity in the cardiovascular health of African Americans require input from a broad set of stakeholders, including clinicians and researchers from multiple disciplines. So what this is telling you that there are underlying prerequisite diseases and ailments that will lead to cardiovascular disease, which is the number one killer of African Americans in America. Now read Deuteronomy chapter 28. You read again. He says, if you fail to do all of these things in the law, that diseases will come upon you. But I thought we could eat everything. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I'm just saying, according to this, there were certain limitations on certain things that you should and shouldn't eat. So The question is, could the text be giving us an ideal diet for our health so we can avoid heart disease? Yes. And what does that consist of? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm a nurse, right? So,
Uh-oh. There we go. I'm glad you're here.
yeah, so a lot of my patients, like they come in with heart disease and all this, with ankles, feet, and all that. They want to request, like, what can I do? I'm trying to take it.
There you go.
Most important part, stay away from pork,
There you go.
shellfish,
Mm-hmm.
stay away from it, man. Your life will change dramatically.
Oh, almost like overnight. But people don't believe you. Let me read this article to you. When I read this, you come like, oh, that's deep. Watch this. One of the secrets to good health is this particular diet. Let me bring it up real quick. Hold on. Where's my article at? Here we go. I think this is it. All right. This is called the Med Diet. How many of you have heard of the Med Diet before? Raise your hand. MED diet, the Med Diet. Or the Med stands for what's called the Mediterranean diet. And there's different varieties of it. One of them exists in Israel natively. Since Israel is a Mediterranean country, the Israel diet is a Mediterranean diet. That is the type of diet eaten in countries in the Mediterranean region. These diets vary depending upon a particular country. All of the Mediterranean diets, however, share certain characteristics. A typical Med diet consists of plenty of vegetables, grains, nuts, legumes, and fruits. Olive oil is a predominant fat. Wine occasionally accompanies meals. And many Mediterranean diets, such as the Italian diet, are low in fat. The Spanish Mediterranean diet has a high fat content because of its increased use of olive oil. Now, this is modern times. Ancient times, things were done with more moderation. The Israel Mediterranean diet is somewhat atypical because not only contains plenty of fruits, grains, and vegetables, but it is also Western in its use of eggs, dairy, and meat, a consequence of Israel's early agricultural policies. A dizzying number of diets are promoted in America, each targeted for a specific issue, such as weight loss, cardiovascular disease prevention, go back, weight loss, cardiovascular disease prevention, improved diabetes control, or other health concerns. However, only the Mediterranean diet favorably influences all of these conditions in addition to other health problems. Listen to this. Studies have indicated that the Mediterranean diet has a positive influence on certain forms of cancer, asthma, and helps prevent dementia, depression, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and weight loss that no other diet can make such claims. Now, I don't think if you're connecting the dots right now, what I just read to you was something that even this author says, no one even knows why this diet is so healthy and why it can have a full spectrum touch on all these varying diseases. It says it has a high antioxidant count. During the body's normal function, supercharged oxygen and nitrogen molecules are produced, and these can be harmful unless neutralized by the body's antioxidants. High blood glucose and cholesterol levels, as well as smoking and eating trans fats, increase the production of these supercharged molecules and lead to what is called oxidative stress. This diet is the antithesis to oxidative stress. And then it goes on and on and on. This is a very great article. Then it goes into the 7 spices. Then we read spices there too. It says these spices are extremely helpful. Shiva, Menim, or the 7 spices in the Torah are being special products of the land of Israel. These are the fruits that give you heavy antioxidants. They are wheat, barley, olives, grapes, honey, dates, figs, and pomegranates. Deuteronomy 8:8, right? Right. Depending upon the time of the year, the fruits of the Shivat HaMenim are ubiquitous in the Shuk. The 7 spices are perfectly adapted to Israel's climate. Then it goes into olive oil, and it's very moderate drinking of the wine. And sometimes that could be a good way of helping the stomach with its infirmities. We read that in the text as well, right? Somebody advised somebody else that you can sip a little bit of wine to help with the infirmities of your stomach. Yes, no? Shaul said that to who? He gave advice to somebody to say, sip a little wine for the infirmities of your stomach. I'll let y'all do your homework on that, right? The Israel diet has the potential to be a model diet since it combines the healthiest foods of the Mediterranean together with some wholesome foods of the West. Olive oil is favored rather than corn oil. Wines are plentiful. Figs, dates, pomegranates, and a multitude of other fruits are readily available in season. Vegetables with tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers are easily obtainable and used extensively in salads. Nuts such as almonds and walnuts grow naturally, and pistachios in the country, and also high in antioxidants. Restaurants and takeout meals in Israel tend to contain far more vegetables than in the U.S. Hummus and tahini are popular dips or are made from these natural products. So it's like, what are you talking about, Divine? Okay, let me read this article that connects this diet to the increase of health that it has the potential to contribute to when it pertains to African Americans here in this part of the globe. What I'm saying to you is, this seems like it is a divine manual on how to reverse the #1 disease that kills the most African Americans in America by taking this ideal diet and applying it in your regular routine. Let me read this last article and I'm gonna close out because I know we've been here a little lengthy. But I think this last article is gonna help bring everything home. When you see scientifically, so I'm not just using the scriptures to say, oh, look, the Bible says this, so just do it. I'm showing you the scientific, biological, medicinal benefit of adhering to this. So this is an article called Mediterranean Diet and Cardiometabolic Diseases in Racial Ethnic Minority Populations in the United States. You know, African Americans are one of those, right? The abstract goes, the Mediterranean diet or Med diet has been recommended to the general population by many scientific organizations as a healthy dietary pattern based on strong evidence of association with improved cardiometabolic health, including lower risk for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and obesity. Now, how come when we get these ailments, we're not told jump on the Med diet? And then from a cultural vantage point, we can say, yo, this has already been there. And if we were to keep the things, keep the things that are outlined in this text, and we were to implement this diet, there would be no cardiovascular disease that we would die prematurely from here in America. It wouldn't be there. Science is a witness, a second witness to what we're reading about in here, because one of the things that you read in the Torah, it says you do these things so that you may live long in the land. You may have an extension of life in the land, but if heart disease is prematurely killing us from the ages of 18 to 45, where the most cases of premature death from heart disease, if we were keeping these things since we were young, all the way up to that age, then we would not be afflicted with this disease. But because of our disobedience, he allows this pestilence to cleave unto us until it consumes us. Let me keep reading, man. Let me keep reading. Now, mind you, going to the doctor, this should be the first thing they tell you. If we are going to advise anybody with heart disease, if we're in the medicinal field or doing homeopathic medicine, naturopathic medicine, which we have a program for, the first thing you should say from out of your culture is try the Med diet. I don't think that'll work. Give them all the litany of scientific material. And then go back to say, well, nobody really knows why this diet is so ideal for people with heart disease. Well, I can tell you by point. Okay, let me stop. Let me just read, because that might make me sound biased, right? Mm-hmm. It says, because, however, most studies have been conducted in, now watch this, watch how ill this is. However, even though this thing is so great, most of the studies have only been conducted in Mediterranean or European countries among white population in the United States, while few exist for non-Mediterranean countries or racial ethnic minority populations in the US. Because most existing studies evaluating adherence to the Med diet use population-specific definitions or scores, the reported associations may not necessarily apply to other racial ethnic populations that may have different distributions of intake. What am I saying? I'm saying that because even though this diet is so great, they have rarely done any studies of applying this diet with African Americans. Yet we have the #1 disease that this can remedy. Tell me how crazy that is. They want to put you on drugs. They want to put you on management therapies. But the simple thing they can simply do is tell you, look, if we look at all the data for these other countries where it's helping, damn, this could work for you. Try it. Thank you. It's about money. But why not even try to say, well, let's see if it even works for the Black community? They're like, nah, let's do some other kind of therapy to help them out. Instead of giving us, this is another way the nations are keeping us from keeping you away from that. Because it's already there. The prescription is there. but they're keeping you away from this.
So what you're saying is the Mediterranean diet is synonymous with the diet of the Torah.
Correct. And everything that he was outlining for them, what they can and can't eat.
So
with fruits, berries, nuts, trees, fruits that produce seeds, plants that produce seeds. All of that is part of the med diet that relates to not Italy, not Greece, but to Israel. And they're going to take that and they're going to do a sample study or actual experiment in vivo, which means in the real world, and see if it actually works. Because they created an abstract to say, look, we have studies from everywhere, but what about black people? Will this help them? And they said, look, let's do it. Let's give it a shot. And when I tell you the results, you should already know the results.
Right.
That if we adhere to this simply by reading this and following the cultural mandates, not the religious laws, the cultural mandates, it will liberate you from heart disease. And you can then give this to somebody else and say, if you don't believe me by telling you from the text, look what the scientific article says. I'm gonna let him give his point and I'm gonna give you the conclusion of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic that heart disease is the number one killer. And in Torah, those Israelites who fail to keep Torah do not want to keep Torah. They say they have a heart condition. Their hearts are hard.
You need to preach. That's a message that you need to speak. Say that one more time. That's deep. Wow, that's deep. Go ahead.
When you fail to keep Torah, you have a heart condition. They use the term that you have heart in your heart. Harden your heart against the most high. So ironically, you get punished. You get punished the same way. It hits home. If heart disease is the number one killer, it's the number one killer because you're rebellious.
And spiritually, heart disease is also the number one killer. Spiritual heart disease.
Yeah, there you go. So it's all tied. It's all tied in.
And what we're saying is we're giving you one template. Now, if you want to do an elimination diet or you want to supplement it for other things, that's fine. You can do that. There's no restrictions on that. But what we're saying is there's one prescription here that was prescribed from the deity to the people that if they kept that diet, they would live long in the land. And if you go against that diet, then hey, certain things are going to happen to you. It's very clear outline here. But let's look at the results. So in doing these results, they did a multi-ethnic study, right? The Mediterranean diet construct, some of the population median was 10 groups: vegetables without potatoes, fruits, whole grains, nuts, legumes, fish, certain types of red meat, moderate alcohol consumption. And when they say alcohol, they're talking about wines, natural wines, and so forth, right? And they did this study with whites, African Americans, Native Hawaiians, Japanese Americans, and Latinos. The med diet was associated with lower risk of CVD, cardiovascular disease, mortality in white participants, in men more so, and then also in women, but in African American men by 95%. African American men, that at 95% of the cases, if you give them this med diet, it will reduce their risk of the high mortality rate that comes with CVD. And if you want this, 95%. And if you want this article, it goes, like you can see, like it goes. Yeah, it breaks down everything: vegetables, fruits and nuts, legumes, dairy products, cereal, fish, what types of meat. And if you look at these things from the Israel vantage point, a lot of these things are laid out already in the text where the prescription was there. We just have them implying it because nobody's been telling us that this has something to do with us.
Right.
Now, I'm not here to say whether we're the people or not. That's a separate discussion. You already know my stance on that. But all I'm saying is it just looks very interesting that this diet can alleviate the number one killer of black people in America. Is it a coincidence? I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. Right. And with that, I'm going to leave this alone. I have more I want to read on it, more documents to get shared. I'm going to cut the time short, open up a Q&A or just an open discussion. But I thank y'all for checking out hearing me, sharing this information. Please share this with loved ones, people you know. It's a way to make the culture alive today. Because if you cannot find a practical means of applying what you learned in here, what good is it? If you can't show that it's solving societal ills that we face every day, what good is it? Right. This shows you how to deal with your brother in equity and in truth and not stand idly by while something is happening to your brother. And even you have an argument with him, if he loses something and you find it to give it, there's so many things, the codes of conduct and ethics that are laid in this text. Imagine we would apply it in our communities today. with this diet to reduce of any risk to any of these diseases related to bad diets, poor nutrition, how much of a change that we will see in our community almost overnight. It is remarkable that we have a template for a revolutionary change in our community, but because of taboo, we are kept away from this text.
Right.
So with that, I'm done, family. If you want, you can ask questions, open up discussions, or whatever. The floor is yours.
Anybody got anything?
I know that was a lot to process. I know it was deep. It's a roller coaster up and down and so forth, but we at the end of the ride. So definitely let me know your feedback or ask a question, give some, whatever. It's up to y'all. Y'all got the floor.
It seems like what you're saying is that a lot of this is to do with the geography of where you are.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I'm born and raised in New Orleans. We moved to Belize since Katrina. And there it's easier to have this kind of diet. Right? It just seems like since there was an exodus outside of Egypt, then, coming up on our 400 years, what does our exodus look like? Is it purely spiritual? Because to me, location has a big deal to do it, and it's not taking any responsibility, from our discipline. But I could just speak for myself. I mean, being in Belize, you can see, breadfruit. They got different seasons for citrus. We live in harmony with the land.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? And even to speak on what you said earlier, when I got to Belize, nobody ate catfish. I mean, it was strange to me. I grew up in New Orleans. It was, we all ate catfish. To get there and said, all right, like you say, cultural markets, these people are abiding by the laws.
Correct. And the indigenous laws
like,
there,
I mean, I was raised in the Old Testament, and when I get there, I say, whoa.
You see it now. You see it preserved amongst a culture that's actually applying it and the results.
And these people don't have the scripture like that.
They don't have the scripture. They don't even have modern technology, conveniences.
And eat the meal right after it. That's in total contradiction.
Exactly. And again, a template is something that you can build off of. So the same template that's laid out, you can find the equivalent of each one of these items in what's here locally in New Orleans. To see what's grown here, what animals live here, what crops are grown here, and you can make a connection with each one of these items to something that is locally grown if it cannot be imported here for you to eat or consume as part of your diet. So you can still adapt to what is being said, what was done there, to what's being done today, simply by doing the homework and making the equivalent associations so you can create a type of med diet by what's available in the respective environment that we're in today.
1 second. This is the chef. It's not vegan.
Come introduce yourself, my brother. I want you to come here so the camera can see you.
Shalom, Kwan. Go by Eat the Israel. We opened this business, Vegan Snack Shack, in the evening time as Cafe Porch is closed. But we do vegan food, mostly gluten-free. We try to keep it alkaline, but we're working on those options as well. So, I'm based in the Hebrew Teachings.
So you're here at this spot, right?
Yeah, we're here at this spot from 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. Sunday through Thursday.
All right, so now we're running out of time, so the brother don't work overtime. Family, if you come to New Orleans, please come to this spot where this event is happening. He's here from 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. And what you said, what days you're here?
Sunday through Thursday.
Sunday to Thursday. So since we have the brother here, can you tell them what's available so we can patronize this brother on this evening?
All right, so this evening we have the Yahweh cauliflower tacos, which is, we usually had an option of a flour wrap, but today we only have the corn tortillas because some people only wanted the gluten-free, but it's sauteed cauliflower with the 3-pepper blend, which would be like bell peppers. Then we have the barbecue cauliflower baked macaroni, which is gluten-free also. We had a wild Hebrew plate, which is quinoa topped over with zucchini, squash, bell peppers, carrots, and other vegetables. And we also had a Judea burger, which is a burger based out of a hemp seed patty.
Wow. Damn, that's too many options right there.
Yeah, so that's a few, but every other day we have a lot more.
Yeah, so what else you said? There's more options?
Like every other day.
Every day, but today that's what we got. What do we have to drink? What do you have to drink?
We have pineapple, strawberry, banana smoothies, and we have a San Pellegrino or something.
Okay, so let's take a break, family. Let's go and patronize, get something to eat so we can wake up and just finish up with a Q&A. But this is why we do events at places like this, so we can patronize people within our own community and let people know where they're located at. So if you're in the region, you can come and support. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a break real quick. We'll be right back.
I just want to add and keep in mind that they didn't charge us a dime.
You hear that? Say that one more
They
time.
didn't charge a dime. A dime, you know, and this is a black-owned business, a black-owned establishment. You know, black-owned establishments usually does not, can't afford to, even if they want to, they can't afford to even take a shortcut or a discount. So they didn't charge us nothing. So when we go down here, get your plate to eat now, and get you something to take home and put in the refrigerator. Let's reciprocate that same love back.
All right, and somebody named Assertia Y'all told me to say what's up to you, and she said they said that you rap too. So see, they be on it, man. They be on it. All right, family. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll let the live stream roll. We're gonna go eat, come back to a Q&A. If you have any questions, I'm gonna stop this stream and create a new stream for the Q&A, which is the second part. And as soon as we're done with our Q&A, everybody's going home. All right, we're not gonna stay that much longer because it's extremely late. But I definitely thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoy. We're about to go eat some great vegan food. I wish y'all were here. This is where you can do a little meet and greet and eat. And then stay tuned for part 2. We have a little bit more time. If not, then we'll do this on the Q&A another time. All right. So let me stop the session now. Much love for y'all. Thank you for watching, and peace and shalom, family.